We're good. Welcome to the March 6th Board of Trustees meeting. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Chris Bollerman, please lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, our first order of business is we're having a special presentation from the Port Washington Fire Department in relationship to EMS billing. We have Chris Bollerman. Please introduce yourself, Chris, because I don't want to call you the wrong title.
Good evening, sir.
No.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the Board of Trustees. My name is Chris Bollerman, and I'm a former chief of the Port Washington Fire Department and currently serve as the chairman of the department's board of directors. I'm here tonight to speak to all of you and your residents about the Port Washington Fire Department's proposal to enact cost recovery for emergency medical services and our proposed contract for the village's 2023 budget year. The village of Flower Hill is very unique to the fire department, as you're the home of a world-renowned hospital, served by 3 separate fire departments, 4 separate ambulance services, 3 separate water districts, 3 separate school districts, but 1 police department. At this time, 2 of the 4 ambulance services that provide emergency medical services to your village are already participating in cost recovery. In fact, the Nassau County Police Department, which is the major provider of emergency medical services in the village, has been participating in cost recovery for over 20 years. So this proposal from the Port Washington Fire Department will in no way be new to your residents. However, we hope that it is administered in a more compassionate and caring method that puts the resident first. Some background about the department. The Port Washington Fire Department has provided emergency medical services to the people of Port Washington since its inception in 1927. Prior to 1979, the Port Washington Fire Department's ambulance squad was funded through donations. In 1979, due to increases in demand for emergency medical services and training, the Port Washington Fire Department created the Fire Medic Company. The mission of the Fire Medic Company was at that time and remains today to strictly focus on the treatment and transportation of sick and injured persons. When the company was created in 1979, there were roughly 750 ambulance calls per year. The Fire Medic Company is funded through the Port Washington Fire Department's contracts for service with 7 separate municipalities. In 2022, the Fire Department and the Fire Medic Company responded to 2,580 ambulance calls and 1,471 fire calls on the peninsula. For a 5th straight year, the Port Washington Fire Department remained the busiest fire department in all of Nassau County. However, our budget ranks 12th in all of Nassau County. The village of Flower Hill in 2022 represented 10% of the department's fire calls and 3% of the department's emergency medical calls. The Fire Medic Company is comprised of 72 dedicated volunteer members who selflessly spend their thousands of hours each year serving and protecting the people of Port Washington. You may be asking yourself how an all-volunteer force can handle this enormous call volume. The dedicated volunteer members of the Fire Medic Company are supported by members of the Port Washington Fire Department. Additionally, the fire department employs 2 full-time and 29 part-time employees to supplement the volunteer members. The employees supplement the members Monday through Sunday, 6 in the morning to 6 at night. In 2023, the department expects to expend $724,000 of salary to supplement these volunteers. Hopefully that sounded like the why, and this will be the how the Port Washington Fire Department will enact cost recovery. On April 9th, Governor Kathy Hochul signed into law into the New York State budget to allow fire departments to collect. Part KK of this legislation amended Section 209B of the General Municipal Law to allow fire departments previously not permitted to bill for ambulance services to begin doing so for a 4-year period beginning July 8th of 2022. This legislation is important because New York was the only state that prohibited fire departments from billing for ambulance services. With the 465 fire departments in New York State being prohibited from billing, fire departments lost over $100 million annually. Until now, taxpayers had to fund these losses. With tax caps and hard financial times, many fire department ambulances have been forced to cease operation. The new cost recovery law took effect on July 8th of 2022, and no bills for a fire department or fire company-based service could be issued prior to that date. If approved, the Port Washington Fire Department would not anticipate enacting cost recovery until on or about June 1 of 2023. Please know that my remarks that have been made will continue to be made focus strictly on the Port Washington Fire Department's geographical area of responsibility within the village. As for the monies received from cost recovery, all funds received from cost recovery must be used to offset the cost of providing ambulance services to the authorities having jurisdiction over the fire department, and this village is an authority having jurisdiction over the fire department. Though the law does not require that the department maintain a separate account for EMS recovered funds, the Port Washington Fire Department will segregate all funds recovered by municipalities served. You may be asking yourself if the people of Port Washington, of your village served by the Port Washington Fire Department ambulance will feel a financial burden as a result of the fire department enacting the cost of the program. And the answer to all of you is no, you will not. In fact, the people of Port Washington, section of your village, that are served by the Port Washington Fire Department ambulance will feel a benefit from this program, as the department will invest these funds into strengthening the service we provide by recovering health insurance monies that you're already paying each year. If the municipalities we serve do not permit the fire department to recover costs, not only will they be leaving dollars on the table and asking citizens to make up the difference through fire taxes or donations, but may also be compromising the safety of the residents. By choosing to build the Port Washington Fire Department has full control over how we define a inability to pay, and we've established rules with our provider and competent legal counsel covering those situations where cost recovery may cause an undue financial hardship to the people we serve. The Port Washington Fire Department has gone to great lengths to establish a policy of compassionate billing while still being 100% compliant with state and federal guidelines. To begin, within our policy, sick or injured persons who reside within the geographical area of responsibility of the Port Washington Fire Department and are transported to a hospital will have any applicable insurance copayment automatically waived due to the assumed payment of town or village real estate or property taxes. A narrative will be submitted with commercial insurance claims stating municipal resident patient cost sharing obligations may be waived. Patients that reside within the geographical area of responsibility of the Port Washington Fire Department will be responsible for their deductible should one apply. Non-residents will be responsible for both the co-payment and the deductible should they apply. You may be asking how we determine a place of residence. No, we do not follow the federal law of where you file your federal taxes. The department will simply follow the appropriate New York State emergency medical service laws that require documentation of all sick or injured persons that are encountered by EMS agencies. This information is documented on a pre-hospital care report. As part of the reporting process, requires documenting the name, address, and date of birth of a sick or injured person. Often this information is gathered from persons verbally or via personal documents. This information will be confirmed by the department's third-party biller. Simply put, where a person says they live is where they live. We are only interested in verifying if that location is within the department's geographical area of responsibility. I spoke earlier of a resident's copay being waived. This applies if the patient is transported from their home or another location within the department's geographical responsibility. An example of this would be if a person is a resident of Manor but is picked up and transported from an address in Baxter Estates. The patient's copay will be waived due to their being a resident of the department's geographical area of responsibility. However, a person that is picked up in Sands Point and states they reside at an address outside of the department's area of responsibility will be responsible for their copay. All home addresses provided by patients will be cross-referenced through the department's address database system for validity. As for the uninsured deductibles and ability to pay, by law, an uninsured sick or injured person that is transported to a hospital cannot and will not be billed for service. Additionally, the department has decided that we will not initiate cost recovery for persons that are treated and released or refuse medical attention. The patient must be transported to a hospital to initiate cost recovery. If an insured patient insinuates in any way that they cannot pay the cost or that any type of payment may cause them some type of financial hardship, the department will not offer a sliding-based payment based on income. We will not offer a payment plan, and we will not offer some other type of arrangement. Any person stating a hardship in their ability to pay will have their associated costs waived. I'm sure you're asking yourselves, what are some of the factors that can make a person's presumptibility eligible for elimination of any balance due? A patient's household income is not in excess of 500 times the federal poverty level. A patient that participates in state-funded prescription programs. A patient who's homeless or received care from a homeless clinic. A patient that participates in the Women, Infants, and Children's program. A patient that is food stamp eligible. A patient that is subsidized school lunch program eligible. A patient that is eligible for other state or local assistance programs that are unfunded. As for who will determine anyone's ability to satisfy the invoice they receive, the leadership of the Port Washington Fire Department will not, I repeat, not be involved in determining a person's ability to satisfy the invoice they receive for the cost recovery program. All decisions will be made by a third-party billing company based on policies and procedures that have been predetermined. The Port Washington Fire Department leadership will only be informed of the case number and the amount of funds collected. The third-party biller will not be informing the department of reasons why a case was closed or why only a percentage of funds were recovered. Now let me just tell you how we would gather the information. The gathering of patient information begins at the time of the alarm, when we respond to the house and we record information on the patient care report. The gathering of insurance information will also be attempted at this time. If it is not recovered, it is the responsibility of the third-party biller to locate the proper information. No additional time will be taken at the scene of anyone's home or accident or emergency to collect information on insurance. All the patient's insurance information will either be written down on the PCR or insurance cards may be photographed, scanned with a Port Washington Fire Department PCR tablet and uploaded into our system. Members' phones are strictly prohibited from being used. All information is then uploaded and double encrypted when transmitted to the third-party biller. In an attempt to recover costs associated with the provisions of emergency medical services, the following steps will be done for the PCR. First step, EMS personnel record the proper medical insurance. The report is transferred to the third-party biller and cost recovery is initiated. Second step, if EMS personnel are unable to record proper medical insurance at the time of transport, the third-party biller will utilize a computer program in an attempt to locate the patient's information. If the information is located, the claim is processed. If not, the third-party biller was unable to locate the patient initial system, they will then utilize another more enhanced computer program. If the information is located, the claim is processed. If they're not able to do that, then they will make numerous phone calls from the phone numbers provided from the patient at the time of transport in an attempt to contact them. The third-party biller will attempt to make contact with the patient via a written document that will be sent to the home address provided to the EMS crew at the time of transport. The form is not a bill. It's not a bill. It is simply a request to provide insurance information. If the patient or the representative responds in writing with a phone call to the third-party biller and provides the requested information, the claim is either processed or closed based on the Port Washington Fire Department policies and procedures. The biller assures us that they will do all they can to not send any documentation out and do it all over the telephone. As for patients that simply refuse to cooperate with the cost of recovery, after 90 days, all cases are closed. All debt is forgiven. As for the cost of the service provided versus what a patient's insurance company agrees to pay, aside from deductibles, the Port Washington Fire Department will only accept what the insurance provider agrees to remit. There may be cases where a patient's deductible is greater than the cost of services provided, and this could lead to an issue. But we must remember, deductibles are selected or chosen by individuals. The Port Washington Fire Department and the village have no say or input in the patient's decision-making process when choosing their deductibles. Individuals know what their deductibles are long before they need to use them. And yes, for a multitude of reasons, a person may have chosen a high deductible and may have difficulty satisfying said amount. With that said, I remind all of you of the department's compassionate billing policy and our willingness to forgive debt. With the department's compassionate billing practice, all the patients need to do is advise a certified ambulance coder or certified ambulatory privacy officer of their issue, and the situation will be remedied. Unlike the Nassau County Police Department, there is no written documentation such as a W-2, a tax return, or a bank statement that is needed to be presented. Though the case will be closed verbally over the telephone, the patient will, however, be mailed an ambulance transport fee financial hardship form. This form is expected to be filled out and forwarded back to the third-party biller. In the event this form is not provided, the third-party biller will close the case. With that said, even though the case is being closed verbally over the telephone, the department is still requiring that the ambulance transport financial hardship form be filled out and forwarded back. This is due to Medicare and Medicaid, along with private insurance industry being involved, and the federal government's Office of Inspector General that can audit us at any time. The Office of Inspector General will question and investigate why fees were waived for some, but the United States government, New York State government, or private insurance carriers were required to satisfy balances. By completing or attempting to complete these documents, the Port Washington Fire Department will remain compliant with state and federal regulations. Within the department's compassionate billing policy, the only person that will be placed into collections are those who receive compensation directly from their insurance provider and cash said insurance check and do not forward the funds received to the Port Washington Fire Department. The claim will then only be forwarded to the credit bureau if the patient is unresponsive to numerous attempts to contact them. That is also known as insurance fraud.
Hey, Chris, you want water?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, please. Sorry.
You look like you need it.
I feel like I'm back in court. And
And if you want to cut to the chase,
Yeah, wrap it up.
We've
because
got
we got a lot.
Okay.
we've got most of the
We get
gist
it.
of it.
Okay. The Port Washington Fire Department expects its cost recovery program to hold the line for the near future on the portion of taxes that fund emergency medical services in Port Washington community. We expect to provide EMTs and advanced life support technicians when volunteer EMTs and advanced life support technicians are not available. And I'm going to really wrap it up.
Thank you.
As for the public, we hopefully will begin a public reach out campaign on Wednesday, March 8th, where we will post a fact, frequently asked questions to the department's website. It's quite lengthy and quite detailed and has all kinds of scenarios on it. We will also, once all the municipalities have had a chance to vote, you're only the third of 7. I don't even know if you're going to vote tonight, but once everyone's had the chance to vote, if it's approved, then we will have town hall type setting and we will reach out to all the residents. And that is it. And I offer myself to you and your constituents for any questions you may have.
So as you and I discussed beforehand, so thank you very much. Thank you. We're not going to vote tonight because there were a couple of contractual changes that just came in this afternoon.
Absolutely,
So
sir.
our attorney hasn't had time to read it. We haven't had time to read it.
And for the record, those changes that your attorney received today
Mhm.
are the identical points as only relating to cost recovery that the town of North Hempstead approved on Wednesday. There is no difference in the cost recovery portions.
Right.
The village contract versus the town contract are two different animals, though.
Okay, I didn't have a chance to read it. So.
No problem.
No, it just came in. Does anyone on the board have any questions about this?
I do have a question, probably more informative for the public, because we do have a lot of people here that I think probably live in the Port Washington Fire District. Chris, what drives your calls in the district? Are there certain business operations? Is it residential? Like, can you help everybody understand what drives calls in the Port Washington Fire District?
I think that the fire calls are driven by the affluency of the peninsula. Everyone has an automatic fire alarm in their home, where in certain areas of Nassau County, the people don't. They have a smoke detector in their bedroom, according to code. So the affluency, everyone has a central station monitoring company, and that's driving our call volume through the roof for fire calls. Okay. The other part that we're having is our population has gotten older. My children are the 7th generation in Port Washington, and I think I'm a little older, but we built these properties in town, these 55 and overs, and we go down to Rosenwasser Road to 300 Overlook almost 300 times a year just for ambulance responses. Mill Pond Acres, Pierre Apartments on Main Street, 454 Main Street, the Main Street School, I call it, but the landmark. Mm-hmm. So those are what's driving our EMS over the edge. Plus there is, we do get a lot of ambulance calls that are non-emergent, that people just, they feel the luxury of the service that we provide. Okay. And we don't mind, we don't mind, we'll keep coming, but the whole tipping of the iceberg is that the typical, and I say this in all our budget meetings, the typical person that buys a home in excess of $1 million doesn't join the local volunteer firehouse. So we need to supplement those guys that are in the local volunteer fire department. and we have to pay them to do that. They don't come and volunteer on their time off, it's their part-time job. And the mayor knows that the fire department in Port Washington does all it can to stay to the cap.
Mhm.
We stick to the cap and we beat it into our heads, and we don't want to explode the cap, and we need to hire more people, and we need to provide a paramedic 24 hours a day, and this is the only way that we can do it. And that's why we came up with the compassionate side, so that the taxpayer doesn't feel it.
Okay.
Right, so primarily, you're getting monies from the insurance companies. If almost 99.9% of the money.
99% of the money is going to come from the insurance companies, whether it be Medicare, Medicaid, or private.
Right.
And all somebody has to do, the biller is actually going to say, Mr. Janice, will this $1,200 cause you a problem? Well, darn right it'll cause me a problem. Okay, sir, I'm going to send you a form. We're not looking for any of our residents. We have to collect the money, but we're not looking to hurt any resident. We are not looking to hurt them. There's going to be enough funds to provide the service with the insurance monies that come back.
Because then the alternate would be probably to have to pierce the tax cap, because you need to hire professionals to provide the same level of service that everyone's had these many years.
Sir, I could sit down with my comrades on the board of directors right now and come back here in a half an hour and raise our budget $4 to $7 million without batting an eye.
Mhm.
We're 12th. The little guys, they're $12 million, we're 4.5. You've got $10 million, you got volunteer fire department budgets at $10 million without batting an eye. We're 4.5, includes LoSAP. We're really struggling to do things, but we're trying to, 99% of the fire department lives in Port Washington, so we don't want to crucify ourselves.
Okay, so this is a good thing for the community, because the people will be paying for the services that they're using versus it just being the taxes. Any other board questions before? Go ahead.
Just one quick one. So we have a handful of businesses. So let's say somebody in the Flower Hill Auto Body, you had an emergency quote and they don't live here, the employee.
That would be Roslyn.
That would-
Let's.
Oh.
That would be Roslyn, but I can't answer something on that.
Don't we have any businesses?
No.
We don't cover any.
No.
Oh, okay.
Right.
All right. never
But if
mind.
we responded to Roslyn.
But if we did.
If we did respond to Roslyn, the law prohibits,
Oh, the fire business.
the law prohibits from collecting cost recovery on mutual aid. So if Nassau County Police are not available to respond to Flower Hill Auto Body, and the Roslyn Fire Companies are on another call and they can't respond, and Port Washington respond to mutual aid, we will not attempt cost recovery there because it's a mutual aid call.
They could only do it in their geographic
Okay.
map.
Thanks.
We actually have a license from New York State that says our area of responsibility is the part of the village of Flower Hill that is in the Port Washington Water District. That's the only map that we could really find that defines you guys. So if you're in the Port Washington Water District in Flower Hill, then that's on our license.
Thank you,
Thank
Chris.
you.
Does anybody from the audience have any questions for Mr. Ballerman? Yes, Mr. Frankel.
Just because I've heard this for the first time. What's wrong with the system for Flower Hill residents, which incorporates the 3 areas? What's broken about what we're doing right now that we should go forward and join with our good neighbors to the north here in this endeavor? Because it sounds to me, it's just a resident hearing it for the first time, you're looking for some economies of scale to support all the good work that you're doing within your jurisdiction, which has very different demographics than the demographics of the residents of Flower Hill as a general rule.
David, they provide fire and
Flower Hill.
ambulance services.
What?
They provide fire and ambulance services to Flower Hill,
Fire and ambulance.
to the Port Washington section. This is for the Port Washington
You're
Fire.
in the Port Washington
You're
section.
in Roslyn.
Yeah, it doesn't affect you because you're like me, we're Roslyn. This is the Port Washington
No,
Fire
but
District.
it still applies in the same vein. The residents of Port Washington Fire District who live on the other side of, not Bonnie Heights Road, but Surreytown Road, right?
No, it would be south of Newlands.
For those residents, what's wrong, what's broken about what they have in terms of coverage right now that they should need this?
Nothing is broken, sir. And I never once said something is broken.
I know, but
What I'm trying to offer, on behalf of my comrades in the Port Washington Fire Department, what I'm trying to offer you is a better service. And the better service is not having a volunteer unavailable to cover a shift at night and possibly somebody sick or injured needing help and not being there.
So their ship, it's being, Port Washington Fire District Ambulance and Fire is being compromised right now, in your view. That's why they should join. They don't have
Sorry,
everything.
I'm sorry, sir, I think you're misinformed. No, nobody's compromised anything. There's nothing compromised whatsoever. The Washington Fire Department provides probably the most superior service for volunteer fire department in all of Nassau County.
I'm just wondering why why the board should consider this and do it.
The board should consider doing this. The board should consider doing this for all of you that live in Port Washington section of the Village of Flower Hill, and even for those of you that don't live in the Port Washington section. Because what we're going to do is we're going to hire trained personnel that can provide advanced life support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When a volunteer might be working overtime, or if Ronnie was the volunteer and she has to do the board meeting tonight, her shift will go uncovered. We're gonna pay somebody to do it. And we can't afford to do that just from taxes. I wish I could, but there's tax caps and we try to follow them in the Port Washington Fire Department. But there's nothing being compromised whatsoever.
I guess you're saying it's broken to some degree
No, no,
and
no.
we can fix it.
Sir, I respectfully disagree with you saying that there's anything broken.
Okay. If anyone else has no other questions, I say thank you very much,
Thank you,
Chris.
Chris.
We'll
Chief,
review what your attorney sent today, and we'll discuss this at the next board meeting.
If you need me, just call.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much. Have a nice night.
Hi, Chris.
I'm going to add this to the April agenda. I just want to remind everybody who came late to please sign in.
If they want to speak, they don't have to sign in otherwise. Right? I lost my chair. Next, we will go to public comment, and the first thing we're going to hear is from Mr. O'Rourke on 69 Mason, assuming he's here.
All right.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, and thank you for your time and attention. By way of introduction, my name is Kevin Rourke. I'm here with my wife, Kristen. We've been residents in Manhasset for 3 years, but newly minted homeowners in the Village of Flower Hill. I'm here today to talk about a tree on our property. So by way of background, and this information I hope has made it to your inboxes prior to the meeting, but I gotta give a high-level overview of the issue. So when we had the home inspected prior to purchasing it, the first thing our home inspector saw was a 65-foot hickory tree residing or positioned just a few feet off the actual structure of the house. That completely dwarfs the home. Half the canopy is actually over the roof, and there's visible signs of damage to the slate tile, which is otherwise beautiful roof. And as we looked further and further, we saw extensive damage to the side of the home and things like that. So there's a risk to damaging the home, and the inspector said you should have to answer that with an arborist right away. We did that. We actually were fairly diligent. We had 4 different arborists, local trusted services take a look, and uniformly they all said the best option is to remove it. Again, that's because the tree is so close to the home that anything that comes down is going to hit it. I've sent pictures actually of damage to the home, as well as an overhanging branch that fell directly on the power line that I removed.
We have.
Great.
We have more. Yeah, we have it, yes.
So we applied through the proper channels and permits to have the tree removed. The village arborist weighed in and said that she preferred the town was preferred to have it pruned. So we went to the arborist who, we were commissioned to do this, and he absolutely warned against that. And the reasons for that is when you prune half of the canopy of the tree, you do 2 things. One is you unbalance it, that now exacerbates the fall risk, and the other is that the tree's lost half of its leaves. And so the lack of nutrient supply could risk death. And he said, I've actually done this for residents of Flower Hill, and he pointed out dead trees that he had pruned before that are now going to be removed once the homeowners wish to have them. So he kind of forecasted the future that the pruning of this tree is not the right answer, it's to remove it. And so we mutually agreed to have a 3rd opinion. We commissioned now a 5th arborist to write an unbiased letter. He evaluated it and said with absolutely certainty there's no recourse other than to remove the tree.
Is that the letter from Mr. Weir?
That's correct, yes, exactly right. So that letter was received by the town, and the arborist's opinion stayed, which we respect. I had tried to communicate ways to prune it, but again, the advice is steadfast that that would not be the correct action and would cause more harm than good in the long run. So we're here today to ask to have the permit to move the tree.
So thank you for doing the due diligence of bringing in another arborist. From what I heard, Mr. Weir is very conservative. So for him to say cutting a tree down, that's
Yeah.
very opposite of what he normally does. He likes to save trees. My one concern is he's talking about a red oak and your application is for a hickory. Is it the same tree or is he looking at a different tree? Or-
It's absolutely the same tree. We put a large white X on it, and it's also, you can't miss this. This is-
Okay,
this
so your
is-
application is just, your application is calling it the wrong type of tree.
Sure, that might be a typo.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that he wasn't looking at tree X and you're asking for tree
Oh,
Y.
fair, yeah.
Yeah.
So when you look at the property, you see the home, and then you see a massive overhanging tree.
Mhm.
So it's very clear to all the others to question which tree is in question.
It's in the rear yard?
It's in the rear of the home, yes.
I don't want to, I'm speaking for myself. I don't want to make a decision on this yet. I'd like to give the board, if they're so inclined, the opportunity to go to the property and perhaps see the tree themselves to see. I mean, the picture does a pretty good job, but I think people might want to see the tree itself. And I'd like to speak to our arborist again, because in a brief conversation with her a few weeks ago when this application first came in, when she said she was denying it, and she gave me all the reasons why. And I said, okay, and you're usually right like every time. This all is new information from Mr. Weir and your other arborist. So I'd like, and maybe if the board would like to speak to Ms. Frankel, I think that'll give us an opportunity to readdress it with her and
Okay.
see if she concurs with Mr. Weir. If anyone wants to look at the tree themselves and see how dangerous it is close to the property, close to the house, close to the power lines, et cetera, and then decide what we want to do from there accordingly.
Okay, the board will be welcome to visit the property.
Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? I think this, I guess you can survive another 30 days.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure. Yeah, no, thank you for coming in. That's why we have this process.
Of course.
You know, our arborist is very smart person, but sometimes there are things that we can question, and that's why we have the open meetings for this.
And we would like to work with you to find a resolution for sure. So-
Right, and we'll obviously have you replant a tree somewhere, and we'll have to figure, if we decide to allow you to cut the tree down, there'll have to be some sort of replanting done.
And that would be a welcome solution. We could reply.
Good, we'd like to hear that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Then a motion to continue to the next meeting.
Yes, I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
All right.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, since we're in public comment, I assume, based on how many people are here, that people want to be heard. That being said, if this is in relationship to St. Francis, I have a statement I'm going to read, which hopefully will answer a lot of your questions before you ask them. Preserving and protecting the community is the top priority of the board and I. Our decision-making has and always will be driven by what the residents of the village of Flower Hill want, and we will conduct things in an open and transparent way. Based on an unsigned letter distributed to the residents of Flower Hill that live near St. Francis, I want to be absolutely clear that there is no conspiracy to support an expansion project at St. Francis Hospital. Insinuating such conduct is disingenuous and harmful to our community. It is also unfair to the board members that volunteer countless hours to serve the community and do such good work. To that end, let me share some of the things we have been working on, which should help alleviate some of the concerns you have. I reestablished the Landmarks Preservation Commission, which had been dormant for more than 20 years so that the village could meet to determine which historic properties needed to be protected from any development or material modifications. The Elderfields Preserve is one of the properties that the Board of Trustees will be considering for landmark status at the April 3rd Board of Trustees meeting, and I totally support this effort. I hope the community supports these efforts since preserving our history is important. As for a planning study, I and the board think it would be prudent for the village to be proactive instead of reactive when it comes to addressing any potential projects that could affect our residents. Since we have no proposals before the board, I thought it was best to take the opportunity to assess the current state of our land use and have a community dialogue and input. We've all seen recent development that has occurred or has been planned in nearby villages, including built and proposed projects along the shores of Hempstead Harbor, throughout Port Washington and in Roslyn Harbor, which have and would negatively affect people who live by these projects. If we had similar development in Flower Hill, I would be concerned about many things, including the effects it would have on those residents that live near the development during and after construction, traffic and strains to our school, fire, water, and sewer districts, as well as to the environment. Other than the Flower Hill apartments on Middle Neck Road and the condominiums at John Bean Court on Shore Road, our village is predominantly built out with single-family residences in accordance with our zoning, as well as a small number of commercial businesses along Northern Boulevard and Port Washington Boulevard. We have a quaint village, and I think that is what our residents want to maintain. It has been about 40 years since the last major development in the village, which consists of the John Bean Court condo development. However, there are several parcels, many of them currently zoned residential, where if additional development were to occur, it could result in unwarranted impacts if not properly considered. These include the following: the Vincent Smith School, St. Francis Hospital, North Hempstead Country Club, the Di Stefano Garden Center waterfront parcel on Shore Road, and the Elderfields Preserve property. As for any expansion plans from St. Francis Hospital, the hospital has not presented anything to me or the village, so there is nothing to share with the community. That is something I would immediately share with the community once we received it. The lines of communication are always open between the village and St. Francis, and I try to speak with the hospital at least twice annually about any projects on their existing buildings so that we can adjust our building permit revenue budget expectations up or down accordingly. Also, as anyone else can do, the hospital is free to purchase properties wherever they like throughout the village, Nassau County, and elsewhere. If that's how the hospital wants to tie up their capital, that is their right, since there are no laws that I know of in this country against the freedom to purchase land. This does not mean by right that the hospital can build whatever they like, change the zoning of these properties, combine the lots together, etc. That is something that the hospital would need to present to the Flower Hill community through numerous public hearings, done in compliance with all applicable laws, and get the buy-in of our residents. Now, speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for the board, but for myself, I'm 100% opposed to changing any residential property to commercial, industrial, or hospital use. I like the community the way it is right now, and I personally would not want to live next to an outwardly expanded hospital footprint, and my vision of the village of Flower Hill is to maintain its residential nature. That being said, if anyone has any questions you want to go through, or other public comment, if you want to pull the list, we'll do it accordingly to sign in.
And if anybody came in late and didn't sign up for comment, you can do so on the list after Ronnie reads off who's going to be here.
No, I'll let you call them. And can you remind everybody about the rules of public comment?
Yeah, there's some names I cannot, I can't read at all.
Yeah, I can't read it either. Well, you'll have to call them last then.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, just as a reminder, our public hearing meeting rules are posted on the wall, as well as up on the website. Each person will be allotted 3 minutes of time. If, by permission of the mayor, you would like to exceed that time, he does have the right to extend it. Otherwise, we will be telling you that your 3 minutes are up. There are a lot of people here. We would like to get home at a reasonable hour, so I hope you'll understand the reason for that. Okay, so there's, I can't make out the first one. Mr. and Mrs. Lanzow, I know you're here, but you're, not mine. Peter Rosenberg, you wish to speak?
No.
No.
Okay, Kevin O'Rourke is here, interested in the tree. Chris Ballin, Lindsey Brown, do you wish to speak?
I just have a couple of questions.
Okay, then if you can come up to the podium and state your name and address, and then you can begin. Oh, nobody can.
Hi, I'm Wendy Brown. I've lived at 15 Cherrywood Lane for the past 35 years, and I love the village of Flower Hill. That being said, I have a few questions on the development. I believe it's Oak Tree. The hospital street is Oak Tree.
Oak Tree.
Okay, because I get confused, Wood Hill, okay. Anyway, on the north side of Oak Tree is a new house that's being built. Is that owned by the hospital?
The corner of corner of
Wood
Oak
Hill.
Tree and Wood Hill?
No.
Correct. Okay. Somewhere I heard or read that 8 homes on Oak Tree are owned by the hospital. Another home that was, I don't know who the owner was, they had the sled over the garage, a blue house.
Yes,
I believe they were gardeners or landscapers.
They were-
Totally, yeah.
Did they sell to the hospital? Because that
It's
house,
hard for the board to
You
know,
don't-
because they don't really look at our real estate records. You can call the office tomorrow, and I can look it up in my database.
okay. So I'm just curious to know, like, because that home looks like it's being torn down.
they have a building. Peter, you want to address the building permit that property has?
But the building permit wasn't taken out into the hospital, we took it out, I don't know if anything's changed since.
Okay.
We don't hear about real estate transactions.
But that permit is specifically for the original owner of the property. If it was sold to a second party, that building permit is not valid.
Okay.
So it's our assumption right now that that property is owned by who purchased it and who's doing the renovations on it.
Okay, all
The
right.
village doesn't find out about transfers until after it's been sold and processed through Nassau County Assessment. At that point, Nassau County Assessment sends us a notice, so we're kind of like the last ones to learn about it.
Okay, so my last most important question, is St. Francis Hospital a for-profit organization or is it a nonprofit? Meaning, do they pay taxes to the village of Flower Hill?
So on properties that they purchase, they apply to be tax exempt on those properties. That being said, we have asked them to increase their pilot payment in lieu of taxes to cover the loss of the village tax. And they have done so far on some of the properties that have transferred to their ownership. When they come off our tax roll, we call them up and we have a conversation. We say, hey, listen, we lost X, Y, and Z, and they are in the process of making us whole for
what
that.
time period?
We received payment for this year.
It should be, so pilots, for any pilot, they're all voluntary, but they've been giving us pilot 4 years. 4 years, FOR, not FOUR. 4 years on
Many-
other,
Four-
4 years on their hospital itself. They don't have to pay taxes on the hospital. So
So all those properties that they're purchasing,
we'll come off our tax roll.
okay,
Yes, but
So
we've
that's
asked them
gonna
to make us whole, and they have agreed to make us whole.
for what time period? For 1 year, for 5 years, for?
We've asked for
perpetuity?
forever,
Okay,
but again, every year is a different year, and there's no legal contract between us and them that says that, because this is a voluntary payment. So right now, we're being made whole. I can't speak for the future, and I can't speak for the future for anything in the village. It's the same way with church properties.
Yeah, can I point something out on pilots? So St. Francis isn't the only nonprofit in the village that pays pilots. There are several properties in the village that are under nonprofit status, and so the village asks every single one of them to contribute to the tax base, given that they are coming off the tax roll. That is something that the village has done for years to try and recoup some of the expenses that we incur.
Right. So we still pick up the garbage. Like if there's a church property, we still pick up the garbage, we still plow the streets, we still pave the streets. So we do get pilot funds from some of these entities.
and it's sufficient to cover the lost tax base?
That's a case-by-case basis.
Right.
I would tell you.
Without
so-
looking at that, I can't answer that for each individual property. But for the ones for the Oak Tree property, so far we have been made whole.
3 minutes is up.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
Dimitri Deli? No, okay, thank you. Lisa Kane Smith? Jacqueline Ford?
Can I take your place?
Sure.
No, so that's,
I'm sorry.
You have to wait till the
your
end.
turn. You're on here.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm thinking of the
Yeah, you got
last
people
one.
who signed up before you have to speak
No
first.
problem. I'll wait.
Jacqueline Ford? No? Okay, Ms. Tom.
Thank you.
there we go. I'm sorry, I thought there was a long list initially. I thought it was.
So I'm Myron Tom, 57 Hewlett Lane. And
At the time.
I listened to your statement, Mayor, and I think that everything you said in your statement is absolutely true. Because St. Francis hasn't applied for any kind of permit to expand, so you guys wouldn't have to inform the community that anything has been applied for because they haven't as of yet. But what we do know is that Jack Martins came here in 2020 and said that the hospital was gonna buy 11 properties. And to date, 8 properties have been purchased. Now, some of that hasn't been transferred, Ronnie, over and haven't been recorded yet. But those properties have been sold on that block. So my first point is that you're right, there hasn't been a permit to expand. However, their intention is to buy 11 properties. Somewhere along the line, they must have gotten a green light because you're right, you guys can't tell them that what they can buy and what they can't buy. But when they pay up to $2.1 million for a property that is well valued over what every other property has been sold for, we have to take a look at facts, look at the block, look at the properties and say, what's going on? So that's my first point. The second point I want to make is, and I'm assuming that we're discussing now old business, which is the RFP for the planning study. So in the are we discussing that now?
No, this is public comment. If you'd like to bring that up, you can
Okay,
bring that up
because-
in your 3 minutes.
I would like to bring it up.
Excellent.
Because in the February supporting documents that were supplied regarding the RFP for the planning study, what it read like a map in how zoning could be changed in the village of Flower Hill, Bryan, how zoning could be changed in the village of Bryan Hill, Flower Hill as a shortcut. It clearly states a full comprehensive plan covering all the aspects of such plan set forth in 7.722, the New York State Village Law, blah, blah, blah. And then it says, however, 7.22 allows the village to tailor its land use planning to a level of detail adapted to the special requirements of the village. So that would allow Mr. Blanco to be able to write a law and shortcut the situation in getting a rezoning. Now, you've stated 4 properties here. There's 4 properties here that you're talking about a risk of overdevelopment, like Engineers Country Club in the Roslyn Village. One is a property under the viaduct, which is the DiStefano property. One is North Hempstead Country Club and Vincent Smith School, which have been in existence since the 1800s, and there's no chance at this point in time that anybody's reached out to them to develop a property. However, we do know there's that risk, and then you've lumped St. Francis Hospital in with this.
I'll let it talk. I'll let it continue.
Thank you. So my question is, why are we lumping St. Francis in with these other 3 properties as a point of maybe overdevelopment of condominiums, when what we're really talking about is a planning study to look at rezoning of the village of Flower Hill? So I'm confused why St. Francis is in with these properties and why that would be part of this. Why are we talking about that?
The document you're referring to, and when it states what the New York State law allows for, this was done, it was pointed out for just to do the planning study, the land use planning study. That's all it is. It's nothing more than that. And on the basis of the planning study, then the board would review, there would be a presentation to the public, there would be public hearings, public input to determine what might be next steps. That's all the purpose of the planning study.
Just like in the past, we've done traffic studies. So
Right.
we've done traffic studies and
So I think you've leapt from an RFP to suddenly zoning changes. And that a lot of things have to happen before you get to even the idea that there might be a zoning change in the process.
Okay,
And I wanna
but
point out-
Ronnie writes in the supporting documents for this meeting that it's about the zoning change. She writes that that's the reason why we're having the planning study is due to a zoning change.
I'd like to jump in here with a
Yeah,
point,
please,
right?
yeah, explain an
So-
RFP.
Folks, I'm not going to explain an RFP right now, but this goes to the question of why would we do a study, right? The properties we have identified are the last large properties in Flower Hill. North Hempstead Country Club, St. Vincent Smith School, Hospital, the DeStefano property, right? Those are properties, I think, relatively over 3 acres.
and Elderfields.
And Elderfields, right? That if they got sold or transferred tomorrow, what happens to it? What are the limitations on it? So this board was trying to be forward-thinking of how do we make sure these properties don't, all of a sudden, we're dealing with like Engineers Country Club, an application for 100 homes, or 1,500 homes. And what does that mean to the community and to the fire department and to the school district? That study did not include any properties on Oak Tree Lane or Crabapple or Woodhull, okay? So let's be clear here about the facts and the information. There's people in this room that I walked around when I was running for mayor and had to answer questions constantly about this. And I've talked to you, I've sat in your kitchens and talked to you and reassured you exactly what Randall said tonight. And nothing has changed. This board's position has been consistent all along. So you want to know what the planning study was for, that's what it was for. If I think this community wants to give us feedback and say, don't do a planning study, don't look at this, and then the village can wake up one day to an application for a large amount of homes being applied for, that's fine. I don't think that's forward thinking. I don't think that's what this board was trying to do.
But why is St. Francis being part of this development of condominium statement? Because St. Francis is already zoned as a hospital. I don't understand why you're putting this in.
Because just like the golf course is a golf course today, if the hospital left, right, they have said that they have a need to expand. They're operating 105% of capacity. So if they do want to expand, which the acquisition of properties seems to indicate, and we say no, and they go, okay, we're out of here, we're selling the property. Yeah, someone's gonna have to come with an application for that property at some point, right? So just like someone would have to come for, if they acquired the golf course. That's it.
I think the idea is to understand what are the possible outcomes. That's what the planning study is about. What are the possible outcomes? And one of the outcomes could be a scenario that Ryan is suggesting. It could be quite different. It could be, we want to build higher, we want to build out. We don't know what ultimately that plan is, but at least we ought to understand what are the possible scenarios that we could address as a community. Flower Hill decides what we accept as possible ways of development, future development on these parcels versus just leaving a blank check out there.
It's just a study. The study can come back and we could just not agree as a board with what the study has and says. It's to give us some guidance on what we might want to think of doing zoning wise with some of the existing properties.
And there's another thing I want to address before it goes further, folks. Excuse me, ma'am,
I'm
ma'am, you're
sorry.
out of order. There's another thing I want to
You
address.
need to wait your turn.
There's some trigger words being used here that I want everybody to know. Green light, right? What's the implication of that? There's some sort of corruption going on, right? There's something untoward going around behind your back. That is not going on, and I'm tired of it. I've had to deal with it for 4 years now. 4 years. From you, Aaron, from Kate Hirsch, and from others in this community, implying that myself, this board, and the late Bob McNamara, who couldn't even defend himself after he died to that stuff. All right? I'm tired of it. You want to have a community discussion? Have a community discussion. Stop trying to imply that people are doing corrupt stuff, because it's not true. Okay? It is just not true.
you have to sleep at night.
Thank
I do
you,
sleep at night.
thank you for your comments. No, we're going down.
Yeah, if you haven't signed, you
No,
can
she
go
already
there.
spoke.
already.
Let's
If
go.
you haven't signed and didn't want to speak, please sign.
Okay, the sheet.
Jeff, would you like to say something?
Well, after this one.
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
just wondering if you should speak to Governor Hochul's housing because if that does pass, you know, I mean.
That would take control of zoning away from
Then
us.
somebody could
anyway.
build, you know, a 30-building development on the golf course, and we would have no say.
It's not within,
Yeah,
I don't know if that's the case
it's
there.
not within the distance of the.
So
Right.
let's not go.
Joel Levin?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Mr. Levin
Yes.
is next, thank you.
sorry.
Your name and address, please.
Joe Levin, 10 Oak Tree Way. I appreciate what you said, Mayor, and also Brian. I'm just nervous. I live on 10 Oak Tree Lane,
You're at the end.
and I live in the last house on Crab Apple on 10 Oak Tree Lane. And I just want to make sure that the board and the trustees are worried about the residences and not just about the hospital. I mean, it's a big institution with a lot of money, and like, a developer bought the property next to us, 20 Oak Tree Lane. It was bought by our neighbor for $1,325,000. All of a sudden, I look on Zillow, the developer sold the property for $1,700,000. Only the hospital could have bought that property.
But you don't know that. That's
No,
speculation.
You know it.
No, I don't know it until the property has changed hands.
Okay, but
We don't.
no one, the two properties by the Little Village, bought for 2.1, that's way above market value. You have to know, I mean, those are obvious things to me. So like now, the hospital maybe bought the property next to us. It's gutted, it has a green fence around it, we have to look at it every day, there's garbage all over the lot. Like, is that gonna be, if Flower Hill's if the hospital is gonna try to change the rules, is that gonna be there for years
So
and
if
years?
there's an
Yes, the
issue
building,
with the current construction, you're contacting us now, we'll have the code enforcer go and look at it.
Peter,
Okay, I'm
do you-
just nervous,
Peter,
and I wanna
you
make
ju- you
sure
just-
you guys are.
You just need to,
looking after
and
us.
anytime with construction, if they're doing things that are
Peter.
not proper, let us know. We have a code enforcer. He'll be there any day you need him to be there.
Peter, if what he's claiming is that they've already started construction, demolition, do we have a permit taken out on that property?
Interior demolition.
Interior demolition.
And I drive by there once in a while, but you can always call if there's debris or something.
Let us
I
know.
mean, if you look inside, it's all, but I mean, that property's been sold. So the original owner, the developer who bought it from our neighbors, doesn't own that property.
See, I'm not aware of it.
You know, just look on Zillow and you'll see it.
Yeah, Zillow is highly inaccurate. Our building department would know much better than Zillow.
So, Mr. We will look into, we'll look,
I just
Peter will
wanna
look
make
at,
sure you guys are looking.
We will look at the permit.
Valid point.
we will look at the permit, we'll contact who the name on the permit
I
is.
apologize for what I said.
It's apologies accepted, Joe, I understand.
I just I'm nervous that you're gonna protect us.
I think, hold on, let me
We
read,
don't want
let me read this
Joe,
one more time.
On Oak Tree Lane, people driving down, going
Joe,
into a parking.
Mr.
garage.
Levin, I am 100% opposed to changing any residential property to commercial industrial hospital use.
Okay.
So,
Is
There's
I'm,
this ugly fence that's
I
there.
said that.
I understand that, but you don't have to look at it every day. You don't live on Oak Tree.
But there's construction going on all over the
There's no
village.
construction,
There's no construction in the village?
if, hold on,
not there.
Frank,
No,
If they
excuse
have-
me.
if they have a-
There's construction going on throughout the
No,
village.
they
People
stopped.
put up construction
Right, but
fences.
they stopped now.
Well,
But if
then
they-
you need to speak to Peter and he'll he'll work that out for you, Joel. I mean, what?
Understand too, a permit is good for a year. So they have a year's
I'm
time
just
to do the work.
suggesting that the same person who bought it from our neighbor who was developing it is no longer owns the property.
For 4 years.
Now the hospital owns it, I'm wondering what they're gonna, is that gonna
all right,
just say?
Mr. Levin,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
We appreciate it. We'll have the code enforcer look at the property, see what's going on. If
Just
violation
take
needs,
care of, make sure you.
But-
take care of
And
But
Joel,
you
and
could've-
we're good.
it. Okay.
you could have,
Thank
told,
you, Frank.
you could have reached out to us anytime about that, about if it's unkempt. Ms. Schatzkamer, you want to call someone next?
Okay, Gabriella Mauricio.
Gabriella Maurizio with 508 Haskins Road. Just a few
I'm
observations.
sorry, I didn't get your address?
508 Manhasset Woods Road. Couple of observations and a few questions. I'm kind of surprised that this has been going on for 40 years, that there have been all these purchases, and yet there's no curiosity about what the hospital might be intending to do. I'm surprised that you have these periodic communications with senior people at the hospital, and you don't say, hey, you've been buying up all these properties, what is your intention? We have lots of our residents, our community members who are very concerned about what's happening. Have those conversations happened? I'm kind of shocked that they haven't. Then I think the consternation you're hearing here is that these people don't have any inkling of what your intentions are. We've heard, we can't make a decision, there's nothing to do, we need to have their zoning application. Okay, let's just, posit that their zoning, there's a request to, develop big high rises, medium sized, low, who cares? What is the intention of each one of you with respect to these potential applications? They're coming. They're gonna come.
So in speaking to the hospital,
Yeah.
I have asked them about this, and they said that they are working on a master plan. And when the master plan is ready, that they will present it to the community, additionally to the board. Because I said, listen, if you guys want to do whatever you want to do, I don't know what you want to do, you're going to need to get the buy-in in the community. I'm against all this. It's the community that has to buy in to make these changes, if these are the changes that you're wanting to do. They're working on their master plan. They don't have a master plan ready to share. So they haven't been able to share anything with me because they don't know what they want to do. They are buying properties. If that's how they want to tie up their capital, then that's fine. They can buy properties. You can't stop them from buying properties. There's no one in this room that can stop somebody from legally buying houses anywhere.
Well, I get that. It's a free country, or it used to be a free country.
Well, it still is a free country.
Hold on, I want to point out something else because
Go for it.
you brought up curiosity, right?
Yeah.
Again, what more can we do? I will point you back to the letter, and some of you in the room may have gotten back December 2021. The same things Randall said. We have said this to them year after year. This village is not in favor of rezoning these properties.
Hey, that's
What else does
we're-
everybody else want us to say? Like, I'm open to suggestions. If people have ideas, please reach out to us. I don't know how we make it more clear. I've sat there and watched Randall say it to the CEO, and not only the CEO of St. Francis Hospital, but the CEO of Catholic Health Services. Okay, so I want to be clear. This isn't us waiting 3 years, a property gets bought again, and then it emerges. Consistently telling them we don't want to do this. That is all we've heard from the community. Not one person in the community has come forward to say, hey, everybody, let's let St. Francis expand. Not one. Has anybody else on the board seen that? No. We're with you. Joel, with you.
Yay.
I'll say it again. Anybody else? Everybody, we're all standing together on this. So please, this is not productive. Wake up. Shortcuts. Somebody greenlit something. I understand there's nervousness, there's frustration. If we could do something else, if you have ideas, let us know. But all this is doing is trying to create consternation in the community. I don't like it. We're here. We're with you.
There's other people who want to speak. Jeff, do you want to speak now or wait till?
I'll wait.
Okay.
Is there anybody else?
Yeah,
Ms.
Ronnie.
Brown? Oh.
Ronnie, somebody behind you.
Okay,
Please just sign in.
Sign in there. Yeah, Mr.
Dominic, go.
You were up here. Sorry.
That worked. Okay. Thank you all for being here tonight. You guys put a lot of time in. Obviously, you're the guardians of Flower Hill, right? That's what we do. That's
Oh,
what
I
we
just need-
trust
I
in.
just need your address.
75 Walnut Lane, Dominic
75?
Jaco, 75 Walnut Lane,
Thank you.
Manhasset, New York. You guys do, you're really on the front lines of it, so we really appreciate that. And, you said something, Brian, that's very, very important, is that, how many more times can we say to the hospital, this is not a good idea, we're not gonna support it. That's great, I love Oakland, I do a lot of walking around and it looks great. And I also frequent St. Francis. I mean, when you need some medical issue to take care of, you go, right? And they have the chapel and they have, but the grounds are really disparate. They're all over the place, up and down and various buildings and this and that. So the master plan, if they're creating one, along the lines of what they've created, is just gonna be a hodgepodge. The temporary garage comes to mind, and I'm not certain where that is in terms of its temporary status, but it's pretty permanent. So I'm not sure where that is. The thought that I had while we were sitting here waiting for, an opportunity to speak is that, you're going to toe the line and create the speaking point and the decision of Flower Hill to say, we don't want you to expand. You could buy anything you want, but converting property, residential, 1 and 2 family, 1 family in this area specifically to, hospital use is pretty dramatic. It brings in infrastructure and, medical gas and ambulance tos and froms and parking. So, the pedestrian traffic, everything about it. I'm looking at, Oak Lane. I'm not sure who's advising the hospital that let's go buy this property, but the lanes are narrow. The streets are slim. It's a tough channel to navigate when there's more than 1 car there, even when you're walking. So I don't know what their plan is, but here's the question. When you say no, you can't, not a good idea, we're not gonna allow it. What can they do to usurp this denial? I mean,
Well,
how
so they
far can
haven't applied for anything yet. So
They
I'm
have-
saying, they haven't applied for any permits to
Right,
do
I
anything.
get it. But when they
But
do-
so when they do, depending on who's on the board by then, because I don't know how many years it's going to be, and I don't know who still is going to be on this board, that board would hopefully say the same thing I'm saying is we're denying your application. Unless it's something that they convince, because we represent you, we represent everybody in this room. If the community wants it, and for some reason they convince the community this is the best thing, then the people you elect will probably say, great. But everyone in this room, again, as Brian said, I haven't met a single person that said to me, this is a great idea, let's have the hospital expand. So they will apply for various permits. They're going to need to do lot combining, zoning changes, it will take them years of just applications and hearings. If that board says no, then Jeff, what happens at that point?
Well, thanks, I just want to clarify a couple of things. So the board would just be guessing as to what would happen because they have no application before them. So I just want to explain a bit about what's being thought of now to give the background. The purpose of a comprehensive plan is to create a vision for a village. That's what it's about. The section of the village law that talks about it is more of an open study. Let's look at the village, have input. There are 2 separate hearings that have to be gone through. So before you even get to any specific zoning changes, there are 2 public hearings required that everybody in the village would have the opportunity to participate in, just to talk about what is the vision that this village wants to have for its properties. The line that was quoted from 7-722 that talks about being able to tailor that plan is not, and I say this with due respect, it doesn't create a shortcut to a zoning change at all. It has nothing to do with a zoning change.
I'm in the business, I get it.
Okay, so, but this is for everybody, so
Sure.
then you'll be with me in this. The idea of that is to say, instead of focusing on paragraphs A through H or J, it allows for the village to say what we need to focus on in our village. What we need to look at are the larger properties, the properties that have the potential for development. And I'm glad that there was reference to the statement in the RFP that talked about zoning change, but I think we need to read the whole sentence, not just the part that was highlighted, because it's talking about a proposal for services of a planner to assist in creating new zones for existing residential zones, and then we need to keep reading, in order to prevent overdevelopment of large areas. That's what the deputy mayor was talking about. So the purpose here isn't to foreclose. The purpose here, I'm not on board. I'm just saying the purpose of a comprehensive plan is not to foreclose or not to shortcut. It allows a village to say, this is what we want for the village. This is what we're hoping to do for the village. A comprehensive plan then allows in the future, whatever the code says, it allows the village to do a look back when applications are made and you'll know this if you're in the business, and to say, that's not consistent with our comprehensive plan. We put a lot of work
That's the
in.
statement that I'm hoping that we can defend against,
Well,
to say it's
but
not
that's-
consistent, therefore we shut you down.
Which is a
as
part-
opposed to-
So I just wanted to finish with the thought. That's where a comprehensive plan goes to. But I want to go back to what Trustee Lewandowski said, which is, but just bear in mind, that's not a zoning change.
I know.
Zoning changes are complex, and they should be. The requests to make those changes involve notice, and they should. The requests to make zoning changes require public hearing, and they should. Why? Because they involve where people live. So let's suppose a comprehensive plan says we want to consider changing the zoning in a particularly large property. We want to change it to a certain amount of acre, whatever it is. That's a consideration of the comprehensive plan, but not a change in the code. So you've already had 2 hearings on the comprehensive plan, or more, that's mandated, but you can have more. And then you would go to the consideration of the zoning change, and all along the way, part of this process is being considered by the board here is not a shortcut, but to get the involvement of people who can help the village with insight into the comprehensive plan. So the RFP process here is it's incredibly important to have the input of the people who live in the village. Please don't misunderstand me. I am not saying that everybody doesn't, the people who care most are the people who live where they live. But people who work in planning, people who advise in planning, people who advise on the laws of planning are best suited to help the village to make sure they're protected as they move down the road. So what I think the board is doing through this process is to best protect its citizens. The idea is comprehensive plan because we're looking at what the vision should be. Then you consider zoning changes because we're looking at what the nuts and bolts need to be put in place to hold up the infrastructure of that plan. That's what I think the board is trying to do, but it doesn't mean that anything will happen. It means the study has to take place to best protect, and as this board was saying, the residential quality of this village. Normally, if you'll always see bucolic nature, that's what comes up. And I think that what this process will involve is to hopefully enable this village to be able to look to its comp plan and to look to zoning guidelines.
Thank you. 2 points, I'm out of time. 2 points. I never really considered St. Francis as being part of the village, although they are from a property
They are.
perspective. So that's interesting to know. And same as North Hempstead, that's interesting to know. But pilots, payments in lieu of taxes.
Correct.
I didn't know that they were voluntary. I thought that they were mandatory.
Voluntary.
Yeah, voluntary.
We go out with our
Under New York
hat.
law.
Annual basis? Because
You
we've
know,
got,
We send out, there are probably a dozen not-for-profit owned properties in the village, but several churches, in addition to Calumet Historical Society, the hospital. Every year we send out a pilot bill. They can pay it or not pay. The hospital's been very good about paying their bills. Only 1 or 2 other of these organizations pay the pilot, some of them only partially. It's voluntary, under New York law, you cannot require them to pay. So our hands are tied.
So we asked
Send the
nicely.
invoices and hope for the
We,
best.
we asked for more money from some of the, other than St. Francis, we've asked other properties for more money.
Dominic, where
Most-
you may be thinking about pilots, sorry, man.
No, go ahead.
Get through it, where you may be hearing about pilots too is sometimes in lawsuits or around state legislation around utilities. They're using the court case or the legislation as leverage, like a town, I think Town of Huntington did it with LIPA, trying to get a locked-in pilot agreement for multiple years on the back of a lawsuit that was going on. So that might be where you see more permanency, like
and
you're
last,
talking
and
about.
last
And
comment, it
that's not
only
the
seems
situation.
fair that if you're going to give up a property for the benefit of all, the benefit comes back as pilots, and it's more, it's a promise. It's not a promise, it's I hope to pay as opposed to I must pay. And, that's the kind of thing I didn't know. All right, well,
So that's what I do as your mayor, and that's what my deputy mayor does. We meet with these organizations and we go out with our hat in our hands and say, you gotta pay your fair share.
or don't plow the street.
Except you gotta drive through it.
Yeah,
so-
right.
Yeah,
Thank
who else was on the list?
Jolie Taki? Could you
Come up to the
come
podium,
Thank you. Okay. Thanks.
I'm Jolie Pataki, 144 Woodhill Lane, which is right on the corner from Oak Tree. And
you pretty much explained a lot of what I was gonna ask. I mean, the bottom line is that I don't think anybody in this room thinks that St. Francis just wants those houses so they can have their nuns living nearby. I think the problem is that they're gonna do something that none of us want, and it's a great concern. I didn't realize how many houses they had actually bought up until, well, I got a curious letter on my door today. But it's very alarming. Not alarmed about the board, I'm alarmed about St. Francis. And they're a wonderful hospital, they do wonderful things, I respect them, but I don't want them expanding into my life when I don't need them. And I'm very concerned that clearly buying up all these houses, they have something up their sleeve. And clearly, it's gonna be something that none of us like, and probably some people here have some idea of what that might be, I mean, just speculating. And I was just wondering, I understand, I don't really understand all these policies and procedures about the zoning and the meetings, and it sounds like a lot of bureaucracy, but it also sounds like the kind of thing that they could probably find a way to get around. And I was just wondering if there are any kind of, anything we could do in place ahead of time to preempt what
Well,
we all kind
that's,
of.
so that's a good idea. I think maybe we'll start circulating a petition. We get enough signatures, let the hospital see, I've got 200 residents in that area that says, we don't want you to expand. So that's a, thank you for thinking of something
And
for
I'll
us to
lead the
think of.
charge, me and my cousin George will go. I'm not-
I was gonna
Not
ask,
related.
but-
Don't know how we got my name. Thank you.
Anybody else on the list?
Repeat speakers, that's the list of the, or should we ask?
Unless there's something new, not the
Well, it's
same.
about the pilot.
Can you come up to the podium?
Sure. I mean, this just popped into my head. If
Mhm.
this is purely voluntary, then how easy would it be for them to say, oh, you denied our application? Well, you know, we're not making any future payments. I mean, that's.
Well, they haven't made an
that's-
application yet,
No, I'm speaking in the theoretical, I understand all
but
that.
everything is, you're right, they could possibly say they're not good, but they're
Right,
being
yeah.
good, I'll call them residents, they're being good residents now, and they're making the village whole on the revenue we are losing
Yeah,
from
no, I
them.
think we have to anticipate that they're gonna play hardball. You just,
Okay.
I mean, you know, I
but
just think that's what.
It's just like if it's just like any other
Yeah.
tax exempt entity purchases homes in our village.
Right,
It could
so
happen.
What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, there were all these churches, there were probably a half a dozen homes.
I
that
think-
are owned by local
Well, no,
churches.
I'm
I think the
speaking
mayor-
of them in particular, because they're the ones who have leverage over us, right? They've got the leverage.
I think the mayor's made it pretty clear 6 times already
Yeah,
tonight
what,
that,
about the pilot?
yeah,
payments?
that they're paying right now. We don't know what's gonna happen in the future.
I'm
You
sorry,
don't know
Frank,
what's
I
happening in
must
the
be dense
future.
tonight. 6 times, you think?
I think probably, yeah.
All right,
Um,
let's just be, come on, let's just be serious.
All right, last
I'm
comments
very
on this. Oh, Ms. Chieco, you haven't spoken
So
yet.
very serious. Just 2 more questions. One, there's 8 properties that are owned by the hospital. What are they being used for now? Or are they vacant?
Some of them are vacant, we heard that one of them has some nuns living in them, you know,
I-
we don't really know. We don't
Next
really
time I
have that
speak to the
with
hospital, I
residents.
can certainly ask them.
Yeah, I'm just
But
curious.
it's not something that I'm overly concerned with what they're using it for.
Okay, but
So-
are they maintained? I think pretty much.
Have you driven by the houses?
I walk around. I
Do they
walk-
look maintained?
The only one that's under construction, the group house.
So, but that's a different house.
Forget that. Okay.
Every other house,
They're all
they mow the lawn,
maintained, yes.
they shovel their snow.
There's one on the north side that's a little
Oops, well, it's code enforcement. It's code enforcement.
forlorn, but that's. fine.
Listen,
Forget that.
any
My
property you
next
have an issue with, call us up, talk
Okay.
to the code enforcer, and that's what we're paying for.
You've
So my
instructed
next
Jack to watch
question
this.
is
Yes.
totally different with regards to the studies that you mentioned that are being done, environmental studies.
Where we're
and-
asking to do a planning study.
Okay, so it has not been done as of yet?
No, it is not.
Okay,
We want to go to RFP in order to get the best possible price.
great, okay. Do you know the time frame when the study will be done and will the village be advised of the results of the study?
You know, the mayor publishes a monthly newsletter, I don't know if you signed up for it, it's on
This
contact.
is my first time being involved
Okay,
with this.
so you know what, he is very thorough, every month he gives like a really thorough report of what's happening in the village.
Okay,
So it will absolutely be in that monthly
Okay.
newsletter.
So we'd like to go to RFP. It might take a month or two to get the RFP back. We then have to speak to the bidders, and then we'd have to commission it. Could take us 4 to 6 months.
Okay.
Could be
All right.
sooner, could be longer. I don't know. We need as a board to decide if we want to go to RFP. That'll be later at the end of this meeting. And then we'll see what bids we get back.
Right,
So Ms. Chieko,
thank you.
Yeah,
and that'll be our last speaker on this topic. Thank you very much.
I just have one question. I'm going to play devil's advocate. You said something before that was interesting about them, the way, when they expand. So you want to do a plan that will, give us a plan for the future. What if they've already done that? And what if they said, okay, because the town has told us they're not going to let us expand as a hospital. So we already know that they will never let us expand our hospital. But there's no way that their board's gonna let them spend upwards of $16 million plus buying, 20 million, buying land, when they already know that the town's not gonna allow it. So what if their plan that they've looked at says, well, we can't put a hospital here, but we're gonna move, and then we're gonna make this very nice and appealing to a developer to sell it and have them put residential units there.
So they would, that's a good question. That's why
Because
we're,
now they're
that,
buying land going.
so that's why we're doing,
Structure
that's
they
why we're
already
doing the
have.
planning study to
But
understand
can they
these things.
do that?
It's zoned hospital. It's zoned hospital right now. The only thing that could be within the walls of that property is a hospital.
But how easy is that to change?
They need to come to the board, same
It's the
process.
same process we described of months and months and years of going through.
But they can do that. Just why would they spend $20 million if they know that we're not
So
gonna
I
let
recommend
them
you call
expand
Dr.
that?
Charles LaCour or Patrick O'Shaughnessy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're gonna lie. Of course they're not gonna tell you.
They
that.
they haven't told us anything. I've asked the same
But they're not gonna
questions.
tell you that. They're not gonna say, we've thought about
They
this.
said
We
they
know
working-
It's never gonna be enough
I apologize for
space
cutting
for
off.
us.
They said they're working on a master plan, and when that master plan is developed, they will then reach out to the community. Now, they might end up deciding, you know what? We made a mistake buying everything on Oak Tree. Let's sell it back. The market will go up. They'll make a nice profit on it, and then they'll do whatever
Well,
they need to
that's
do.
my point, is they could sell it. This makes a really nice, attractive package for a developer.
But they can't combine the lots. It's zoned for a single house on each parcel.
But they can change the zone.
No,
They
okay,
can't
just
change.
like anything, they have to come to the Board of Trustees with a lot of public hearings. Just like if the people next to you decided to want to split their lot in half.
This is,
But I'm just using it as an example. That would probably not happen. If it's things that don't commonly happen here in the village. And if enough residents are against these types of actions, it won't happen unless this whole board changes and the whole board is elected by people who love St. Francis. But right now, I'm speaking for myself.
One additional feature of that, and I think that's a great question, but I think it also goes back to what is a comprehensive plan? Because that's why a large property like the hospital will be included in the investigation and the design of the comprehensive plan, because it's going to answer and address questions like that for the future.
I think what she was pointing out was assembling all the lots on Oakland and being able to develop that as a comprehensive plan. And that I think is just not
Exactly,
possible,
because
because
they
the way
may,
it's zoned currently is you have to have lots of certain size, and they're subdivided right now, so it would be a whole approval process they would need to come through to the board, through public hearings, to get approvals on. So, I mean, any direction they're gonna wanna go would require all those layers of public hearings and approvals, so.
but it's just, spending.
No, I agree, I wish
attractive.
I wish I was a better poker player with them right now, but we're not.
so here's,
So I'm going to let the deputy mayor speak, and then after that, we're going to change topics.
here's one thing I think would help people is, and maybe we can print this out and put it on the front desk for people to take, is the section on the hospital zoning. Because I think if you all read that, you'd see how restrictive it is. Like, it talks about how high the buildings could be, and really explains that the property can only be used for hospital use. So trying to package that up for a developer, again, they'd have to come to the board, they'd have to request zoning changes, they would have to go out to the community, we'd have public hearings and community involvement. It's not, they can't just overnight package it up to a residential developer and turn that. And that's part of when we saw the code, the village code around hospital zoning, this prompted a conversation from Randall of, hey, all these other large parcels, we should be looking at them, and maybe there's things we should be doing about them to prevent overdevelopment,
'Cause
right?
as of-
So I would say, before we go further with questions and stuff, people will print that out, put it on the desk, read it, and then if people have questions, we can follow up afterwards. Because I think getting kind of grounded in and it's not technical, like roll your eyes over legal language. It's pretty self-explanatory. So I would take a look at that, and then we can follow up with questions on it. Those are great questions.
So in closing, you want to be scared? The town of North Hempstead Country Club, that property is zoned 1 acre residential. As of right, today, if they decided to close the doors, which we know they're not going to do, they could build upwards of 100 odd houses easily, Peter, on that property.
120 acres.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about.
So with roads, they could build 100 houses tomorrow, as of right. That's why we want to do this planning study, to see what we as a village can do and are allowed to do to prevent this type of as of right development. I don't think people want 100 new houses at the country club if the country club decided to go out of business.
No, how many are being built on Shelter Rock Road, right, in
Yeah.
that development?
Yeah.
Right, because well, I don't know how their property was zoned, but it's currently zoned 1 acre residential. So that's the scariest thing to me, and some of these other properties as well. So that's why we want to do a planning study. We want to get ahead of things, not be surprised with an application from an entity that says, "Look, we want to build 40 new houses, 50.
I can say
We're
one
behind.
last thing, I think what
That's it. You're the last speaker.
You're it, Joel.
Everyone's nervous
Really
about is, they're a big, powerful institution. Catholic Health Service, St. Francis Hospital, they have a lot of Jack Mines, a lot of power. And they're spending $20 million buying these properties above market value.
Good for them.
They can't resell them to a homeowner, so everyone's anxious that they're gonna just rough over everybody.
Joel,
with the power.
I want you to keep this in mind. This is the same village, right? Same village board that stood up to the cell phone companies when they came in and wanted to put antennas on everybody's property.
And that was the same
Right?
comment.
First village in the United States to beat the cell phone companies on the cell tower law. So please,
All
have a
right.
little confidence.
With the RFP process, if you create a committee to assist, happy to volunteer.
I will consider that. Thank you. All right, we're going to
Thank you
move
for
to the
coming,
rest of the
everybody.
public. You guys are more than welcome to stay. Oh, give Frank 2 seconds to go to the bathroom.
Frank, could we be back on?
I'll make a motion to open up the public hearing,
I'll second the motion.
and we're going to change the order because I apologize to our friend, the attorney who I was speaking with earlier. We're going to move public hearing number 6, lot line adjustment, 15 West Gate, 12 Hewlett to the front. And thank you so much for sitting through this. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mayor Rosenbaum, members of the board, would you like me to wait until the G's comes back?
Yeah, let's give Frank 2 seconds. If you want to hand anything out, yeah, perfect.
Thank you.
I have so many. Because they do that to me on my board and a bunch of cards.
I know, what is this?
Well, since we're on break, I'm going to eat Claire's cookies.
Need some energy.
If I
Karen, you
may,
want a cookie?
while we're on a little break,
Yeah.
let me give out some photos.
Oh, Joe, cookie.
I already had one. I need a water. Is that locked? or-
Oh, it is, but I will give you my key. So wave the magic wand at the door. And when you first walk in, go right. Hurry up, because Frank is back. We got a lot of stuff to talk about.
Jesus, welcome back.
Welcome
back,
there.
Frank.
Thank you. Welcome back. Yes. How you guys been?
Good, have a cookie. I already gave him to Mary Jo, send him back, but she'll give you that. Max, you want a cookie? I didn't.
This is a bad place to be when you don't eat carbs.
Does anybody need some nourishment?
Blame it on her. She's always bringing cookies.
Claire's good to us.
Thank you, Claire.
This is fine.
Yeah.
3 feet.
Oh, thank you for the roll.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Rosenbaum, members of the board, good evening. My name is Charles Chilipakos, office at 15 Karen Road, Glen Cove, New York. Tonight, I come before you representing two homeowners in Flower Hill who are adjoining property owners. And these two properties and these two owners seek the approval of this board for a minor subdivision and lot line adjustment. For clarity's sake, and the discussions with Ronnie early on in the process, both property owners are co-applicants here, and we've designated property A, which I'm going to refer to, is the granting property, and property B is the receiving property. So these property owners, Amir and Sharifa Sidafawala, are residents and owners of 15 Westgate Road, and Robert and Laura Landau are the owners, residents and owners of 12 Hewlett Lane.
And these are the Landaus.
This, Mr. and Mrs. Landau, and Dr. Sidafawala is back
I
there.
couldn't see back there.
And the designation of these properties, they are both on block 5304. The property A, 15 Westgate, is lot 1530, and the 12 Hewlett Lane property is goes by the lead tax lot number of 213, and then there's tax lot 549, according to the Nassau County records. These two properties share a common boundary line along their rear yards. Both of these properties are in an R3 zone, and the requirement of R3 is 18,000 square foot lot size. Both of these properties significantly exceed that. Property A is, I believe, 36,000 some odd square feet, and property B, 24,000. So we've obtained a no jurisdiction letter from Nassau County, which is part of your package. And I have also shown you a Google aerial representation of the properties and the relationship to each other, I think, as well as a tax map plot, the highlighted yellow of the two properties. We're talking about 958 square feet in a wedge-shaped configuration that runs along the common boundary line. And you have surveys, which we have 5 surveys in your packet. Survey, the first one is at 15 Westgate, which shows the present property configuration. The second is 15 Westgate after the proposed conveyance. The third is 12 Hewlett as it presently exists. And the fourth is 12 Hewlett after the proposed conveyance. And the fifth is a composite survey that delineates the wedge area that's being conveyed. These properties, if you see the pictures that I just handed up to the board, the top picture shows you the portion of the survey and the visual of the backyard. This is.
How about we cut to the chase?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why are you
What do you
guys
want?
doing it? What do you want? And what's the detriment to the community?
Okay, let's do the detriment to the community first. There is no impact whatsoever on the community.
Exactly.
No increase in density, no effect of population, no increase in municipal services, no effect on roads, sewers, or water supply. This 958 square feet, as it is conveyed from property A, will not affect any zoning whatsoever. Area lot coverage, setbacks, FAR, they are all still within proper building zoning codes.
Right. So why is the applicant seeking this?
The applicants are seeking this because there is a contract to convey this property from the owners of property A to the owners of property B.
Yeah, but is it because there's something on the property or the
Well,
fence is in the
it's-
wrong place? Or?
It's in resolution of some conflicting interests that exist, and the parties have mutually agreed
Okay.
to resolve it through
So
a
basically,
contract of sale.
my understanding is the fire pit is too close to the lot
Well,
line.
okay, I mean. if we
And there's some
want-
fence issues, and this cleans it all up to make everything nice and clean.
Exactly.
So we're just trying to clean things up to make
We're trying to
everything,
make things super-
and it seems that both homeowners are in agreement.
Yes, we are in contract.
Peter, as our
So
building
this is subject
superintendent.
of a variance prior with the line as it exists now. I don't have the map in front of me, but I understand this lot line adjustment was to alleviate that to some extent. If I recall, it doesn't alleviate it totally. The setback to the fire pit patio, am I correct?
All of the variances previously granted by the zoning board of Flower Hill will be eliminated if this is conveyed, except for one, and that is the distance of the edge of the pavers to what will be the new property line.
And
However,
So what is that setback, what are you creating with the new lot line adjustment as far as the dimension? Is it on your survey? I don't have survey.
the variance will be, the variance that would be required will be just for the pavers, and the setback will be 9 feet out of the required 10.
So you still need to go in front of the zoning. board.
Yes, once this process is complete, we're going back to the zoning.
And if we do approve this, that's separate, and the zoning board can deny the application.
I understand that.
Just wanted everybody to know. That's not our board.
They granted in this same application, they granted variances that were greater than what we would be going back and asking for. So,
Okay.
my understanding is that this should be looked upon favorably, since it is the obligation of any applicant in front of the zoning board to seek to mitigate circumstances and acquire the least possible variance needed. We are fulfilling that to the nth degree
Perfect, okay.
through this
So,
process.
Peter, you have one
I
more?
just want to point, so
Please.
I don't think you can approve this with the patio as it is, because it still has to go to the zoning board. You're approving a lot line adjustment, but
Subject to.
the zoning still has say
Yeah.
on the patio.
Yes.
They could say the patio has to come out. Yeah.
No, there's no issue with that. We are simply here seeking the approval for the lot
For the
line
original
adjustment,
time.
So
It's
so
a
that we
new
can do
case.
the conveyance.
So it's
So
subject to the zoning board.
So any application that, if this board were to grant it tonight, as everybody's saying, I would suggest to be subject to ZBA approval, but also there would need to be a secret determination, which we can describe in just a second. And I think the idea before was that the one open variance that would be left, where you would be seeking a foot, approximately a foot.
Approximately, yeah.
Previously, they were seeking 100% variance, because it was right on the line.
Right.
So, to that extent.
So does any of my,
Just
so,
to add to that, the board had requested that the
Yeah,
patio
let's
be
just-
cut back
let's just
in
go,
in that decision.
Okay,
so does anyone on
The, all of,
talking
We're
more is
good.
gonna delay you?
we're good. Any other questions?
So is there any questions from the board?
All right, I'll make a motion.
No,
to-
any questions from,
may I just say one thing? I-
No.
I'm concerned about anything that makes this contingent on any other approval, because we don't get back to the zoning board unless we become the owners of this 958 square feet. So this is an application for approval of a lot line adjustment, period.
correct.
Yes or no?
But
Right, the zoning
I
board is still
take the
denying
gentleman's point, this, as long as this gentleman understands, this board could grant this without being subject to anything else.
Yes.
But this is a case of, this is at your peril.
Absolutely.
That's why I wanted to bring that up.
Understood
If they're
completely.
denied at ZBA, they're denied.
before we
Understood.
move forward, does anyone from the public have any questions or comments? Excellent. Jeff, lead me in how to make this
So,
motion.
First, I would ask if there could be a secret determination. I believe that this would be an unlisted action. I would ask if the board could determine that it is the lead agency for the purposes of making this determination, and that this is a either a type 2 action or an unlisted action to the, and that regardless of that, it would have no significant impact on the environment. I believe based on the description here tonight, that the board could make that determination, and I would ask if there is a motion to that extent for the purposes of secret.
I do work on this.
Either type 2 or type 2.
Make the motion.
Unlisted.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye. Anybody opposed? Abstain? No, good.
Well, I can just take two.
And then we get
Okay, so
We
two,
did-
I said
do-
unlisted.
do.
Okay.
And I would then ask if there's a motion for the application been made by council on behalf of the applicant seeking approval for the lot line change under the subdivision provisions of the code. The gentleman's presented notice and the copies of mailings to the village as well as the appropriate documentation from the county. And I would ask if there is then a motion to approve the application with it being noted for the record that any further requirements or obligations and needs and approvals through any other board within the village would be separate and apart from this, and that would be at the applicant's peril. So
I'll make that motion.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, with the record show unanimous.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for, I apologize for cutting you off, but
We had a lot of-
I already kept you here much longer than I expected.
It seems like it was two homeowners kind of working out an issue, like, that is awesome. I really
Yes.
see that.
That's what I was trying to do.
That's the one part
That's
of
what I'm trying to do.
helping the mutual cooperation of it. So, thank you.
All right, good
Bye,
luck.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, public hearing. Let's get,
Okay, let's go through the laws.
Yep.
Proposed
Go for it.
local law A, regulating signs in the right of way.
this is our second or third hearing on this, so I think we can vote on this if the board is so inclined to. I am, so I will make a motion to pass local law A.
I'll second it.
Secret determination.
And I would
Oh,
just ask that in
yes.
conjunction with that, that the
Thanks, Dad.
secret determination should be a type 2 action, having no significant impact on the environment. Is there such a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second,
I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
And I believe there was a motion on the table to approve.
Right.
Second,
I seconded it already.
Behind.
And with
No.
it's good for both.
All in
All in
favor?
favor, by show of
Aye.
hands?
Aye.
Okay, let the record
No
show it's
opposed?
unanimous.
Okay, excellent.
Local law B, property maintenance, removing the word, what was that word?
Willful?
Willful,
Okay.
thank you. Yes. As mentioned in the past, this will allow our code enforcer to more easily be able to enforce water flooding issues from one property to a second. By having the word willful in there, he was having issues with issuing violations to help our residents who are having water problems. So I'd like to, do I have to do secret?
You know what, this all rolls into one, secret and approval together.
Yeah,
That's okay, Jeff?
so I'll make a motion to approve it with secret included.
secret determinations are supposed to be made first, but I would suggest that if we're making, this is a type 2 action, so we can make the motion at the same time. So
Yeah, because
secret-
this one's listed with this, so yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to do it together.
So I made the motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
I will make the second.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington, all in favor?
Aye.
Let the record show it's unanimous. Local law C, this is wireless telecommunication law.
So this is our second
Yes.
public hearing on this, so we do have the right to vote on this if we wanted to.
Well, you know, we haven't really determined the fees yet, so maybe you
Well,
want
we
to
don't,
do that. You wanna-
we question, Jeff wanted to say something to me, I see. So let's wait for 2 seconds. I will be back. Okay. All right, on the advice of counsel, I'm going to make a motion to keep this open until we get the fee schedule, which actually we will discuss later on in new business, so we can tie everything together.
So motion to adjourn.
But I wanted to just ask if there's any questions from the public, because I apologize for not doing that on the previous Local laws. Seeing none,
Okay, motion to adjourn to April 3rd,
make a motion.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Local law,
D,
what are we up to?
D,
E.
D, D.
D, oh, D, building construction permitted hours, this is kind of the permitted hours were in the noise code, and we just thought that it should also be in the building construction code, if someone.
Again, this was on recommendation from our new code enforcer, who said it would make it more efficient for the way he's able to enforce our law to allow for the quiet enjoyment of our residents' properties with nearby construction. This is the second public hearing on this, so I'd like to make a motion to pass this lovely new local law. Did I do secret too, Jeff? All right, Ronnie, you do the words for me.
Type two.
This would be a type 2, and then we go significant impact on the road.
So I'll make a motion on secret.
Okay, we have a motion by the mayor, second by trustee Janice on secret and
Oh, combine.
the law, and pass, and enacting this law. Is that okay?
Just get one to get out.
Is there a motion to do both of this?
Yes.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Unanimous.
No,
Local
excellent.
law E. This is about the noise code that lists every federal holiday, and we thought it would be more speedy just to, rather than saying Christmas, New Year's.
No, the streamlines our code
Yeah.
so that in the future, if there's any new holidays added, we don't have to now change our local laws to acknowledge a new federal holiday. This just has our calendar tied into the federal
I just have
calendar.
a quick general noise question, and you might be able to answer, you might be able to answer, because my neighbor behind me asked me about this. So is there a regulation on amplified sound in backyards?
It has to be, it reaches a certain decibel level.
Okay.
We do have a decibel meter if you want to take, if you.
It's
you
not
wanna
me,
borrow
it's
it.
the.
Yeah, I mean, he can do it on his phone. There's a decibel meter.
Have him reach out to Jack.
Jack. Yeah.
And that would be under public comment, Frank, and that's closed.
I don't want to.
All right,
Yeah,
we'll address
My
it.
neighbors, I don't want to,
Mr. Chair, you have a comment.
Oh,
I do
yes,
have a
sir.
comment, since we're speaking of noise. Interestingly, though, that decorators, it's been a new thing now that you don't decorate with your own ladder, but you bring in a company who then runs a generator on a Sunday morning at 7 a.m. to raise a man lift to begin decorating your house.
Can't do that.
And so, I mean, I've expressed this before I called it in, and I got satisfaction of it. But since we're on the code issue, and I've used these folks on my own home, but they show up on a Sunday. And I actually thought it was a neighbor's generator, and as I went for a walk, it was 7 a.m. And it turned out to be contractors hired to decorate, not opposed to any of it, except for the noise on the.
Yeah, it should, you're not permitted to
permitted on
have,
Sunday.
no noise.
So we have a code enforcer. He can't be everywhere all the time.
Of course.
And we try to mix up the days and hours that he's around to catch these types of things. And if it happens, just let us know, and hopefully and if Jack's not around and I'm around, I actually.
But you can, Dominic, take a picture of the truck and then send that
Video
to,
would be good.
a video, send it to Ronnie, because we do that with,
We inform the contractor.
No, I told it, so we inform it, because once you let them know, they don't do it.
Gardeners on Sunday.
But it's pretty aggressive on Sunday at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
That's why they're just.
All right,
So they
so
go to Jack.
we have a motion on
Local law E,
the holiday law.
federal holidays.
Yes,
We have a motion?
Brian just made the motion.
Made a motion, do I have a
To adopt
second?
local law E.
And a second, and that is for
Secret.
this type 2 secret,
Type-
as well as enactment of the code.
And my motion is to vote on both of them together.
Good job,
Okay.
Brian.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it shows as unanimous. And now we go to the landmark designation hearing.
Presented by our own village attorney.
Although, did anybody have a comment on the other?
Okay, good.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, I.
I'll be
I'll be
Mr.
Can you state your
I was
name,
thinking
please?
of the landmarks.
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Yes.
And your
My name's
address?
Jeff Whitcomb. So,
Thank you, Mr. Blinkoff.
when I submitted to the board in advance for, would present as exhibits. If I may, Mr. Mayor, I think if I can present both at the same time.
Yes, please.
Reference.
Yes.
So the Landmarks Commission has recently begun, has been reinstituted, it has been holding hearings. They have actually addressed 4 particular properties, but there are only 2 of which they're before the board right now. Brief summary, the Landmarks Commission is an advisory commission. They do not make final determinations. The Board of Trustees makes final determinations. The 2 properties that I'm addressing tonight are the properties of the Sands Barn at 336 Port Washington Boulevard, Port Washington, and the second is the Flower Hill Cemetery. I'll briefly summarize the exhibits that I've submitted to the board. They include the decisions of the Landmarks Commission, as well as photographs of the Sands Barn, including with respect to the Sands Barn. I would just like to point out that there's a plaque there's also a photograph of it that indicates that the barn itself was something that was restored for posterity, that this is a 17th century Dutch barn, that the group that maintains it is very proud of it. There's a photograph before you, and I have a color photograph, which I would ask to be made a part of the record. Add to Ms. Schatz's camera so that can be a formal part of the record. The Landmarks Commission heard from representatives on behalf of this. There was no one in opposition to it, and they recommended quite strongly that the barn itself should be landmarked within the village. With respect to the cemetery, which is the second of the 2 properties being discussed tonight, essentially, and I would expect that board members have had the opportunity to see the cemetery. This is something that's roughly 200 years old. It is not active.
Older.
Or older. It is not currently an active cemetery, but it is nonetheless, from the Landmarks Commission's view, a very important part of the history of the village. What the Landmarks Commission looks at in determining whether or not it will designate something as a landmark, first, the intent is to preserve, protect, enhance, and perpetuate the use of places, districts, sites, buildings, and structures that have a special character or special historical, cultural, or aesthetic interest or value. And the board then looks at those within the spectrum of those criteria and did so here. And as you can see, I've also submitted to the board the actual decisions that were made by the Landmarks Commission, which I would also ask to consider as exhibits as this board considers whether or not to formally approve these as landmarks. And the relevant factors that are considered, again, are whether or not they have the character, architectural design, ambiance, cultural interest, historical significance, aesthetic value, and uniqueness to be approved. The final thing that I would like to point out, and as I said, the Landmarks Commission has just been reinstituted, which means that the regulations that apply to it are being reinstituted and used for the first time. There was publication notice of this hearing for tonight. I think there also needs mailing. I would ask that this be deemed the opening of this discussion. I think there needs to be mailing, there should be proper notice. And I'll say everything that I've just said at the next meeting. But I wanted to let this board of trustees know where we are in the process. I would ask respectfully that this matter then be carried over to the next meeting for proper notice so that there can be the formal public hearing so that everything has been done properly. These are important properties. While I don't think there will be any opposition to this, I think it's important that everybody have the chance to be heard with respect to that. And that is my presentation for tonight. So the exhibits that I'm offering are the 2 decisions, one for Sands Barn, one for the cemetery, photographs as to Sands Barn, and a photograph with respect to the cemetery. But I respectfully ask you the opportunity to briefly restate everything on the next meeting or the next meeting of the board. And just for the record's sake, that next meeting will be April 3rd so that we would not need to republish, but we should do the new map. That would be my perspective.
I'd like to thank you for all your efforts with the Landmark Commission. I'd like to thank the Landmark Commission for the multiple meetings they've had. Yes, we'll make the motion to hold this open to the April 3rd meeting, but at the same time, I'd like to have the hearing for the Elderfields Preserve at the next meeting. Can do that now, or should we do that later in the meeting?
The board can make that motion now, and what I will, if the board should make that motion now, what I have no objection to doing is notifying our council.
Yes.
They've reached out, so I'll give them a separate call, just to let them know that it'll be.
Okay, so it's a dual motion to hold these two hearings over to next month and to have our first public hearing on the Elderfields Preserve property.
I just don't know if anybody was here tonight who wanted to be heard.
Oh, does anyone want to speak on the lovely two properties? Oh, sorry, I didn't see you down there, Gary. Yes.
So, operationally, what happens once the determination of landmarking is made? Like, obviously, I guess ComNet has some responsibility, if I can put it as general as that, to the, whatever the statute reads, but I guess what beyond giving them status, what's is operationally happens after that?
So what operationally happens is that once this is approved, I'll just read a part of it, that no building permit shall issue for constructing, altering, repairing, moving, or demolishing a structure that's designated unless it receives an order from the Board of Trustees. It creates another layer beyond building department review. A property that's been so designated would have to come back before the Board of Trustees. And what I was reading from was section, put the glasses off, shouldn't it? 143-8, subparagraph C.
So Gary, it's really just another set of protections for property. Because if it was landmarked by another organization and they came in tomorrow to give Peter an application for the Sands Point barn to knock it down or make some crazy modification to it, they probably could by our code.
Right.
This now puts it in essence in their jacket, in the building file, that don't touch the Sands barn, don't touch the other whatever we end up landmarking. So it's another safeguard to prevent the unwanted destruction or modification of a landmark, of a protected.
Yeah, I just didn't know if beyond that restrictive part of it, where was there anything beyond that?
No, it's really just to make sure that it's in our building file, so we don't ever in the future, again, we're being proactive so buildings that deemed historic aren't unduly modified and lost forever because we didn't know that it's historic.
So, Randall, like on the Sands barn, let's say, does it change anything with respect, let's say lightning hits it and it burns down, right? Or do we insure it because it's on our, or?
No,
So it's nothing.
It's just to prevent the unwanted, intentional destruction of the property.
Okay.
We can't stop God from throwing a lightning bolt.
But it doesn't change anything with respect to our liability?
No, not at all, not at all. Actually, it's the ComNet Historical Society are very in favor of us doing this. And I asked everyone in the cemetery and no one answered.
No.
Pilots, right? They still pay taxes.
Do they play pilot?
No, they do not pay taxes.
Yes, they do pay, they pay part.
But they
You have to-
actually
you have to do it- make it church.
they do pay a pilot, and they've been pretty good when we've asked for a little more,
Yeah, they're-
giving us a little more, so,
they're good
yes.
for citizens.
You can become a church.
Yeah.
And then you won't have property tax.
Somebody has done that.
Yeah, see you down.
The Church of Chieko.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming in.
Thanks again.
We're gonna do the minutes now?
I'd like to make a motion to, oh wait, did we vote on this?
No, we did not. We need a motion,
Yeah, motion.
yes, continue to the third and to add the field preserve to hearing.
I made that motion. Who wants to second it?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Can I make one comment on that? I just want to say this. No, close the public hearing. Yes, let's close the public
I'm
hearing.
closing the public hearing. Oh, all in
Second.
favor?
Motion, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The floor recognizes Deputy Mayor
I do
Harrington.
want to point this out, in the handout, it pointed out that Elder Fields Preserve, Nassau County's attorney, I guess there was a letter of objection or concern around it. Like, we got one of those about, what was the other property?
Yes, down on Shore Road.
So we are getting outreach from people who own these properties that they don't want this designation, so we'll consider that at the time. But I just wanted to point out that on a separate property, we also got a letter from an attorney. So again, it's not a conspiracy, like, this is part of the process. So that handout made it sound like it was a unique thing. It's not. Like, the people who own these properties are engaging in this discussion. So anyway.
Okay.
Well, we'll hear from the Elder Fields applicant next. We'll hear from Elder Fields if they have any objections next week.
Can't wait.
Okay, regular meeting, approval of the minutes of February 6th.
Deputy Mayor Harrington has a comment on the
Yeah.
minutes.
So want to add, Brian, I know you added an update. So for the public comments, continued section at the end. At the end of the sentence where residents Kate Hirsch and Aaron Tongue asked the board several questions, want to add in relation to St. Francis Hospital and zoning concerns. So it's clear on the minutes what the concerns were.
Would you like to make a motion?
I will make a motion to
pass the modified minutes?
Pass the modified minutes.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The claims, do we have any questions?
As always, I read them over. I sign each and every one of them. Everything is excellent as always.
Okay, so we have the motion to approve.
I love Dog Waste Depot.
Got to get those dog bags.
That's a good one.
They use a lot of them.
It's the alternative.
Yeah, right.
All right, do a motion by the mayor, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
So as always, when Max
And
approves.
Max is permanently abstaining from the order of minutes.
Okay, wonderful.
All in favor?
Aye.
ARC.
For February 27th, we had 3 applications. 32 Woodland Road was the second floor rear addition and interior alterations. This is just turning, they came back with plans that were approved as submitted. 110 Pineman Drive, roof mounted solar shingles. We had a suggestion to move certain panels over if the solar exposure was viable. So that was approved with that condition, a possible condition.
Oh, that was.
140, new application, 140 Crab Apple, additions and alterations. We had a couple of minor comments on the detailing there, so it's approved with those conditions. That's my report.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, as always.
Okay, any questions or comments? If none, could I ask for a motion to approve the findings of the architectural review committee?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Gary abstains.
Right.
One thing,
Peter's
Peter, I just want to make sure you and Jack got it. I sent some photos and an email on soil remediation and.
Yeah, I spoke to Jack today, he's got actually three different properties that he looked at. 2 of them, we're gonna do violations.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, as long as we let them know when they try and deal with it, because there's just a couple of them where I know they're going into the storm drains. And,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Rich's guys are
Both
going
of
to
the,
be
yeah, we
cleaning
have
them.
2 of them, and they both had, soil erosion control permits,
Yeah.
so, they weren't done or maintained.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, anything from our public works department?
The only thing, next month, I'll have for everyone, updated, roadmap conditions.
Did you guys sleep at all that night?
When they did the snow.
When? What night do you think I'm talking about? When I heard the plow at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, I'm like, those
The
guys.
one storm this year, you forgot about it already?
I'm like, those guys. Like, did you guys get any sleep that night?
2 hours, an hour.
They leave early. They leave early after. They
I
work
mean,
a
it's
full
just,
day.
even my wife said, like, these guys are rock stars. I'm like, yeah,
They are. They do a
are
great
rock
job.
stars.
Let's just not have any. Nope.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna be plowing.
You know,
tonight.
as
It's 46 degrees. I don't
Rich,
think
that's
you're
the
gonna-
4-letter word we're not saying anymore. I'd like to stay under our budget
Yeah.
for snow this year, so.
Yeah, we
no
should
more
be.
snow.
All right, next.
Village engineer, Mr. Lennox.
Good, I wanna go home.
Mr.
Let's go.
Lennox is not here, his father passed away. My report, okay, we have a change in one of our election inspectors, so we're appointing another inspector, so we can get a motion. So I have the resolutions in your packet, somebody could offer that motion.
I'll make the motion, since I'm not
I
running.
have a Second.
Second.
Gary, beat you. All in favor? Thank you. Software, we're really moving along.
Yes.
Our building program, Unicity, will be going live, beginning of May. We're getting very close to the end of the project. Suzanne and I have started, converting our, financial software to Edmunds. And, that's ongoing. We hope to have it in.
They're saying, that we'll be able to go live the first week in October.
Right, we don't want to do taxes this year because we just too close and there's, we'll just work out.
That's fair.
And then finally, Laserfish has been installed. And now we are in the process of having all of our scanned records integrated into Laserfish, which will then mesh with Unicity.
Right.
So my goal of bringing the office into the 21st century is almost done. I'm so excited.
We're almost there.
Thank you all for your support in this project.
Thank you, Ronnie, for dealing with the 3 continuous software projects. So we all appreciate it.
It's all going to be really, really good.
And Peter's
Just to
gonna
let
love
you
it.
know, Jeff, Steve, and I have worked on getting a bond redemption for the drainage work on Country Club. We
Mhm.
sent it to the bond company, and as soon as we get a response, I'll let you know. Attorney's report.
The only other report I would have is on BZA. There was one mayor's report on last month that was adjourned, partly for an additional requirement of notice, so very brief report.
Mayor's report, that's me.
Mayor.
2 quick things. One, we've got an election March 21st, so I ask, yes, thank you. I'd like to get the vote out. So we have 3 seats open for trustees, so let's come on down and vote. I went to another housing, Governor Hochul Housing Compact, I'll call it meeting, but it was a big press conference. About 30 plus elected officials were at the Port Washington train station. It was hosted by Supervisor Jen DeSena. We had guest speakers we had Mr. Saladino, we had Don Clavin, and I apologize to the the Huntington supervisor. He was there as well. It was a very well attended event, a lot of press. Everyone is duly angry with the governor for the housing compact as it is currently in her budget. Nobody wants almost unrestricted housing within half a mile of train station. As I said last month, that affects a good portion of our residents. So I will continue advocating against this plan, working with the NCVOA, working with NICOM, working with our local mayors who I'll be meeting with on Wednesday. And hopefully we can put an end to this project. Yeah, no, I will need a long look.
One thing I do want to point out, I was at a Long Island Association meeting where they were talking about this and some of the governor's staff was there. The way I understood it, and I think this is one thing we got to get clarity on, I'm not saying that this is okay now, but it may relieve some of our stress level here, is that if you don't have the infrastructure, like if you don't have sewers to
Right,
handle the
right.
capacity, that municipality would be exempt from the requirement. So that is something I have not heard of. So I do want to confirm it, but
I am eagerly anticipating hearing that, but from who I've been speaking to, I have not heard that.
yeah.
Good.
So I just wanted to call it out as that either it isn't clear, it needs to be clarified if that's the intent.
I would think that if
it was
the
raised.
governor was truly going to put that in, she would be communicating that, and that would alleviate a lot of the concerns. But since that has not been communicated to anybody in CVOA, I'd like to say that that information is not accurate. But you were at a meeting with the governor, so maybe she tells you better things.
So,
Okay.
question.
Yes, ma'am.
Ronnie sent the NICOM, I think he forwarded out the NICOM letter that had in it attached to it the Newsday editorial. Did everybody get to see that today?
I think it was from like Nassau County officials, village officials.
Yeah,
Right, the NCVOA. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yep.
And so the Newsday editorial, among other things, was attached. And so my question is, are other villages doing things in their mayor's newsletter or somehow to encourage residents to individually
Yes.
write out
I
against
know
it?
So
that.
what, so what I've
Baxter says,
done,
I know that.
what I sent out in last month's mayor's newsletter,
Yep.
and I probably will do in this month's mayor's newsletter, is very similar to what our friends in Muncie Park are doing, Baxter States is
Yeah,
doing,
Baxter did, I saw.
and I'd like to say definitely my Plandome Manor and
Yeah, Barbara-
Plandome Heights,
yeah, Barbara
they're all
Downs very
doing
much
it,
Okay.
that I'm aware of,
Yeah.
because I subscribe to their newsletters. But they're, I think almost every mayor is, Mineola specifically, because I know Mineola is really strong for this. Everyone is reaching out individually to their residents. to-
Rockville Center is just, oh my gosh, up in arms, yeah.
So we're doing our best. We're trying to inform the community. We're trying to let them get outraged and reach out to Solidity, Martins, but Martins is definitely on board, and to Hockle. Those are the three key people for us. And I have received some letters from residents that said, yes, we've done it. Thank you very much. I sent a letter, et cetera, et cetera. And I give them the draft letter, so they don't have to think much. Just
Right.
put their name on it.
Trustees
Okay,
report.
anything else, Mayor, on your report?
No, I'm
Any
good.
other trustee reports other than Mr. Harrington? Okay, new business, old business. New business or old business?
Oh, the RFP.
Resolution to issue an RFP for land use planning study.
Can someone,
Correct.
I think we know what it is.
Okay, so you've seen the revised sample RFP. I have a resolution.
However,
to issue this.
Deputy Mayor Harrington would like to change a little bit of the verbiage to clean something up, which I'm fine with.
Yeah, in the first paragraph, I just want to clarify where it says existing residential zones. I think that may be causing confusion too, and where it says creating new zones for existing residential zones. So what I'd say is after the comment is seeking a proposal for the services of a planner to assist in reviewing the selected properties in order to prevent overdevelopment of large areas.
That is an excellent suggestion.
Very nice.
Tremendous.
Very nice.
All right.
Anybody else?
So Brian is going to make a motion to issue the RFP based on his changes.
Do we have,
Make a motion with the.
well, I have a question.
updated
Do we have a list of who it's going to?
Yeah, Jeff and I have put together Cameron,
Shouldn't the board know?
Cameron,
I totally
Nelson,
agree.
both two.
Didn't
and
wanna,
Frank, if you have any other
you
ideas,
didn't wanna talk to me, huh?
tell me. I asked you.
I'm the one who
make
raised it.
suggestions.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why I asked, because, I know
Yeah,
Gary's,
I'm not
been-
feeling this out, send
Gary's
this
been
out.
working on this, I know,
Yeah.
for a while,
Email
in
me
the
tomorrow,
office.
please.
I came up with Cameron too. I did talk to Eric Alexander to get some suggestions, but he basically came up with Cameron and VHB. I don't know who else you were,
So,
Nelson and both
H2M.
so let's also make sure we're listing it on our website too, so if people need a link, they can share it with other folks
Yeah.
who may come across too. Just send people to our website.
Sure.
you know?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Wait, I kind of didn't catch that.
Brian would like to post this on our website,
Oh,
as we have done with other RFPs in the
I think
past.
that's
It seems, it's so,
Public.
so Brian, that kind of is our standard
Yes.
process. But
it's
thank you
standard
for
process.
reiterating
I'm
it,
just,
yes.
yeah, making sure we're doing it.
Okay, so I have the motion by Deputy Mayor Harrington. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, introduce local law F, to allow, our zoning board, applicants to use, priority mail rather than, just return this mail. I mean, they've been doing that. And I realize it was sort of pointed out that it wasn't in the code, so we just want to make sure that, everything is covered.
Yeah, we changed this predates almost everyone on the board. I think that when the process was changed, correct?
It's
But we
not-
just never
I
put it in the
went through
code.
I just couldn't find.
No,
it.
we
It's
never,
not-
we never put in the
right,
code,
it's
but
not
we
in the
discussed
code.
this almost 10 years ago. So we're gonna codify it.
Most,
Something that we
most
thought
other
we did.
municipalities
Ronnie,
already
would
do it.
that be any notice of, so like, for instance, the notice that you do for the, what would you present by those?
Except the town. of
Well,
Northampton
we covered the
doesn't.
landmarks,
The landmarks.
because
It's
the
summer.
code says that the same notice is used for Board of Ed.
Yeah, I mean,
Across the board.
I looked through the code to see what other mailings, and the other sections, like for planning or something, it doesn't really specify that it has to be return receipt, so,
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
Because as we know, many people don't like to pick up return receipt because it's oftentimes bad news. So then they're not notified that there's something going on near their home. This
Yeah,
allows.
a lot of municipalities have switched over, except Northampton still requires.
Well, no, we switched over. We just never put it in our code.
That's
We were
good.
supposed to put it in the code and never we did. So this is just
But
housekeeping.
is
Okay.
it proof of mailing?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we
Proof.
require proof of mailing, not
It's
return
a big
receipt.
receipt,
Yep,
and they
okay.
have to also print out that it was delivered.
All right, we can't do anything tonight though, right? We have another.
No, we're introducing it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so, we're introducing that for public hearing, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
And a second?
Second.
Okay,
Claire's got it.
Dorfman, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, local law G, adding a fee for wireless cell communication facilities.
So our attorney, why am I forgetting his name, Jeff?
Ed Ross.
Thank you. My favorite person, Ed Ross, came up with a fee schedule. It's within the guidelines of the FCC, so we're not exceeding it. We're also going to ask for a bond for expenses. So in the case that someone has to have multiple public hearings, we will secure the money in advance to have stenographer, the public, the meeting notices, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the one thing that Ed didn't include in this, but I asked them to include it. So we'll introduce this, we'll discuss it at the next meeting in conjunction with the postponed Chapter 235 wireless telecommunication facilities. I'll make the motion to have this at the next meeting.
Okay, one for a second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Finally. Okay, we need a resolution
I
to
got a
hold
kick
a
out of this
special
one.
meeting for the presentation of the 23-24 tentative budget, and
We need to
aiming
pay the
for
then.
Tuesday, March 29th,
It's
and
so
that's
complicated.
where I just
Plumbing
presented
and
it, you
everything.
come in,
Plumbing.
look at the budget, and that's prior to the public hearing.
Which we've done this every year for the last
That date works for
60
everybody.
years.
It's a requirement of law.
It is a requirement of law, correct.
Yeah.
It's a public meeting. There'll be no comment from the public, but it'll be a public meeting.
What time is that?
You, have 6 o'clock?
March 29th is a Wednesday, so you want the 28th?
I'm sorry, I meant the 28th.
Thank you, Eagle Eyes.
8 o'clock, you said?
6 o'clock?
6 o'clock.
Does that work for everybody?
Yes,
Yeah.
clear, not clear.
I'm out of town.
You'll have to come
Oh,
back.
we need a quorum.
You could come back. What time works for you, Miss Claire?
Palm Springs.
I am on a flight.
I'll be on the golf course.
You know what? I don't want you to kill yourself. Do we have a quorum?
Right, it'll only be 3 o'clock.
1,
Yeah,
2,
at
3,
that time,
4,
so.
5.
I will not
I'm
be
not here either.
Right, you'll be out.
Oh, you're not here?
Nope.
Oh,
What about the 27th?
Monday?
Mary Jo will still be away.
I will be here.
I can make the 27th.
Yeah, I can make either because I don't go away.
I just went away.
I haven't gone
I'm
away.
good with the 27th.
27th's good. 6 o'clock.
I'm fine.
Max? Okay, so I'm 2 down, but I'm still okay. So Monday,
6 o'clock is later.
Budget.
sorry, Claire?
Assuming my flight's on time, I'm supposed to land at 5:51.
Yeah, we're not gonna guarantee.
Give
What
you 9
airport?
minutes to get here. That should be
Yeah,
enough.
that's okay.
Yeah.
What airport?
No, I mean, like we did like LaGuardia.
9 minutes?
No, I got enough for the 27th.
So we're gonna do this Monday, the 27th at 6 PM, we said?
Yes.
Works for those people who are gonna be here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That gets us a quorum. All right, I will make that motion.
Is that
Yeah.
But 6 o'clock, your meeting's not till 7.
We should do, it usually does take more than an hour.
Bring Gary dinner.
This is a quick, this is a,
Just
this
a
is.
budget.
If that means more than 20 minutes.
Yeah, it doesn't
You-
take
you
long.
all-
There's something wrong.
You all will get the budget information ahead of time to read. So this is a
Come
required
prepared
meeting.
with
If you have any
questions.
questions, you reach out to me beforehand and we'll make this a streamlined meeting.
And then we have the public hearing, and then we vote on it at the regular meeting, so
Correct.
the first of 3 meetings.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor by the mayor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Franco, all in favor?
Aye.
And finally, a resolution to hold the annual village organizational meeting and the 2023-24 budget hearing on April 3rd, 2023.
Which is our next board meeting. So I'll make that motion.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and a motion to adjourn. Trustee Franco, do you have a second?
I refuse. I'm staying here.
Trustee
Rich.
Denise, all in favor?
Aye. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Peter?